Hey guys, I want to talk to you about Marek Health, owned by Derek for More Plates, More Dates. Now, some of you guys are on a fat loss journey, some of you guys are trying to gain muscle, and some of you guys are just trying to optimize yourself and your hormones. That's why Marek Health is so great, because you can get your blood work done. A lot of us don't know what's going on under the hood as far as our cholesterol, our testosterone, our hormones are concerned, and you need to get that checked multiple times a year. That's why we've partnered with Marek, and we have something called the Power Project Panel, which has 28 different labs. And if you do get the Power Project Panel, they'll actually be able to partner you up with a patient care coordinator that will go through your labs with you and advise you on what you should do. So, Andrew, how can they get it?
Yeah, you guys got to head over to marekhealth.com/powerproject. That's MAREK health.com/powerproject. You guys will see the Power Project panel. And when you guys check out, use promo code PowerProject to save $101 off the entire panel. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
I don't feel Kratom. I don't know why.
Huh.
You don't feel it?
Maybe we should try this one.
Yeah, try that one.
Dude, I've tried mass doses of Kratom, and I highly doubt this will be different.
Try this. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
if you
take
want to. I ain't gonna. We only gonna peer pressure you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Famous
But
last
you're gonna peer
words.
pressure you.
I have some bad stories with using too much Kratom in situations where I shouldn't have. Like when I first tried it, I think I had such a high dose that I just ended up puking for hours. Out there.
Powder?
Did you? Did you just blend up powder, like tons of powder?
Yeah, so I just mixed up a few different strains, and this was like way back in the day. I was trying to find alternatives for alcohol that wouldn't fuck up your gains, but would like give you some sort of cognitive, like high, so to speak, or like make you more socially fluent or whatever.
How old were you at the time?
I don't know, like 20 or something.
Okay.
Maybe 19.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I just definitely took too much, and then since then the taste and smell just makes me gag. Yeah. But it also just doesn't work for me that well. Like I think certain people have a disposition towards those kinds of compounds.
I'm super curious. Let's see what happens. I think you should.
Do it.
Yeah. Put it down the old hatch.
One of my friends took Kratom for the first time when he was going out on a date with a girl, and then he had to pull over at a gas station and violently puke in front of her.
Oh Jesus!
So that's like when you do a competition, changing everything. Like, here's what I do for training, and then a week out from a competition, like, let me just change everything. Like, I'm going on a date with a girl, very, very big pressure situation.
Yeah.
Let me just try a drug for the first time.
Yeah. Dude, Zach, that pen is really strong.
This
Like
one.
it hit me immediately. The pen you gave me.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh,
Anyway.
yeah. Gotcha.
Fuck. Oh, I also got to mention one thing. Are we on?
Yeah, we're
Okay, so Zach, we were planning on doing, it was planning that Derek was going to come here in December, but then we wanted to do like a mega cast because we had you a few weeks ago, and we were like, that's really good.
We've been talking to Derek forever.
Yeah.
About coming on the show. Long ass time.
So this was already going to happen, but then your video happened.
Right.
So now it's just great timing.
Yeah.
How'd you guys link up in the first place?
So I had seen Zach's videos on kind of like documentary style videos that I thought were really impressive and were totally different than the kind of off the cuff, just jump cut editing videos that I do. And it felt like this situation was just something that required a greater storytelling ability than I otherwise was, I don't know, like used to doing. And having that documentary style editing and having somebody who's good at storytelling and kind of breaking down situations in a, I don't know, professional and palatable way that is, you could actually sit through an hour. That's not just me mindlessly talking. It just felt like somebody to align with on that and just reached out and said, hey, dude, would you be interested in helping me make like a high production value video that is sort of representative of some of the other stuff you've done?
Yeah, and we had you on our podcast before, Zach, and you explained that you are a writer. Basically, your dad was a writer. That's something that you saw, and then you take pride in, I guess, not just maybe doing a selfie of you doing a particular lift or something, or just setting up a camera. You like to share like a story, and you're actually in the middle of a movie right now, like a scripted movie, right?
Right. Yeah. The production of weightlifting's first narrative feature film. It's been an arduous task for sure.
Because weightlifting's so boring.
No, I mean, it depends who you're talking to. Obviously,
okay. Some people enjoy it. Probably somebody out there.
Yeah, so like storytelling, all that stuff. The back end of it comes from good writing, and That's something that I've tried to do on my YouTube channel. What's difficult is trying to produce now more and more content. Like I get a lot of feedback on YouTube. If you look at the Creator Studio, it says, "Oh, like all your numbers are up because you're posting so much." Yeah. It'll literally say that. And so like in my mind, it's like, oh, well, I'll be rewarded for almost like less effort videos, which kind of sucks, right? So I have to like stop and take a break and like actually write something. Again, I haven't done that in a while. But I think those are the things that Derek was talking about, just like higher production value. It takes writing and then like filming and then B-roll and all that stuff. And that's exactly what we did. That was the plan from the jump. Like the moment he came to me, I think within 24 hours, I sent him back an outline, right? Like almost immediately I was like, cool, let's do it. I sent him an outline, like every chapter, what it should look like and how many minutes each section should be. And then he's like, yeah, this looks great. Then I filmed my part. And then there was a big break because he runs 3 businesses and also a YouTube channel. So we just kind of like sat around, whatever. And then he came back and he's like, dude, I like wrote it all out. And I'm like, oh, no way he wrote it all out. And like he actually did. Yeah. It was like a seriously long script. And then he recorded it. And then we had the initial timeline. And that was like the most painstaking process, was dealing with the initial timeline of everything laid out. We had like a 6-hour Zoom call, basically trying to edit it down.
Is it just me, or do you guys find it distracting with whatever Smokey's eating over there? It smells delicious, and he should, share it all. I'm just kidding, Smokey. I just totally embarrass him, but it does smell good, right? Like, what is that?
It smells great.
It's chicken and rice. It actually is chicken and rice.
So, Derek, what did it feel like to kind of hit the send button on this one? Like, because you've made a lot of videos over the years, and I'm sure most of them you probably felt really good about. You're like, this is going to help a lot of people. This is going to share a lot of great information. But this one is different because it could negatively impact somebody's life. There's a lot going on, and a lot has happened since the release of the video. Was there like some conflict when you dropped the video? Was some conflict even just in thinking like, I don't really know what the fuck this is going to do?
Yeah, a little bit. Hesitation for sure. Like, it's a pretty high impact video, and I didn't know it would pick up this much traction, but I knew it would be pretty significantly covered or impactful on, I don't know, just the overarching, like the prevalence of this, the Liver King character over the past year has just been in everyone's face. And, I knew people would be paying attention to the video for sure. And I didn't really know what to expect as far as, like, for me, it was just about communicating what, I don't know, like, I've been on the sidelines watching this thing, like, turn into this debacle of like bigger lie on a bigger lie and a bigger lie. And I don't know, it just like felt sort of like, it felt justified, but at the same time, it's such an impactful video. There's obvious hesitation on my end to put out something. Cause again, like I don't necessarily need the video really. Like for me, like I put out, reaction videos here and there that'll get, 1 million views or whatever. Like I don't necessarily need this video. So it's like, oh, I could just do nothing and, not deal with potential heat on it or anything. So that definitely crosses my mind for sure. But I don't know, it felt like something that kind of just needed to come to the surface and then him address it finally.
It's definitely different than some stuff that we've seen in the past. Like there used to be those like NutriFast or Slim Fast type commercials, or there was like stuff with like Dan Marino and these NFL players and people that used to be overweight or retired from their sport, and they gained a lot of weight, and then they said that they used this product to lose weight. And I think a lot of people probably knew that they didn't, but there's also a lot of people that probably don't recognize that. However, in the case of the Liver King, it was different because anytime the conversation got to be about performance-enhancing drugs, he would not only deny it, a lot of times he would go out of his way to deny it. And in conversation with him, when I sat down at his dinner table, he was the one bringing it up, and he was the one, commenting like that he's natural and he follows these ancestral tenets and stuff. So he kind of, in a way, I guess, like what we saw with Lance Armstrong. Lance Armstrong like went after people, like
Yeah, the
you know,
bullying.
he went after people for years, saying, you know, and suing people and all kinds of stuff. So I think in this case, you know, he's adamantly lying and denying and stuff like that. And so I think it was important to get that information out there.
Yeah, I just I don't know if it's because he's wasn't a public facing individual and was so disconnected from that world from the jump that he wasn't aware of like that, how that is perceived in the fitness industry, because it almost seemed like something you would have seen 20 years ago, but not now. Right. And I don't know, it was just baffling to me that he would not only go out of his way to bring it up and like lean into it. Like you could, I don't see how much, maybe there's a bit less impact if from the jump he just said, yeah, like, by the way, I need this, replacement therapy overseen by a doctor, but like these other, lifestyle practices are still what overarchingly are like my foundation for being a healthy person. Like, I don't think people would have not got on board with what he was preaching otherwise. Like,
and he kind of mentions that it doesn't impact his business much. So if it doesn't make much difference one way or the other, why wouldn't you be forthcoming? And I've been forthcoming. I've been talking about steroids forever. And in my brother's movie, Bigger, Stronger, Faster, I mentioned I love steroids. I'll probably be on and off them the rest of my life. Probably I feel the exact same way today as I did 12 years ago. I fucking love them, and I will probably party with them until the day I die.
You need to chill, dog. Goddamn. But, with this whole Liver King thing, there does seem to be a good and a bad to it, because, and it's not like I'm a big fan of the Liver King, but when you look at kind of initially when he came onto the scene, he was talking about the tenets mainly, and then a little bit later on, the supplements ended up coming in as being like, but if you don't want to eat liver, take this supplement. And the interesting thing that he was doing, which you don't necessarily see done, is, for example, in fitness, when I guess you see this sometimes now, but OG fitness, you'd see guys come on and they're fucking huge and they look a certain way, but it's because they take this specific testosterone supplement. This helped me gain, increase my testosterone. Like, they literally said, this supplement helps me look this way. Now, again, I don't love the Liver King or anything, but he never necessarily said that if you eat liver, you will look this way. You know what I mean? He never said that. And it's a tough thing because I'm not saying it's right that he lied. We know that. It's not good that he lied. But the message was never eat this to look like this, even though for people who are uneducated and aren't in fitness or don't pay much attention to this, it's going to be perceived that way from a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that the explicit nature of everything is what we're ultimately like after all the time. I mean, you could say that like every Coca-Cola commercial, every McDonald's commercial shows healthy people experiencing life in a beneficial way. And yet we could demonize them for portraying their product like that, when in reality it causes serious health issues. They don't explicitly say you're going to be a healthy individual if you consume our products, but it's still likely it's insinuating it, and it's likely going to lead to a net negative down the line. I think there's two like real reasons, and I remember this conversation with Derek specifically, is that it's kind of like we didn't want to. I mean, he could have literally just pressed record and just read the emails, and that video would have banged, and then it would have taken off. But I remember saying, like, let's make this a little bit bigger than that. Like, let's develop a story that is overarching to not just the fitness community, but sales and marketing as a whole. And the holes in all of those things that people refuse to see, or they do see it, they just are kind of complicit in it. So with Liver King, what you saw was a lot of people who are saying the same thing over and over again, as if it's some sort of like new take. If you believed that he was natural, you're an idiot, right? And the thing is, like, nobody would be willing to admit, not one human right now would say, I thought he was natural.
I gave him the benefit of the doubt, though. Seriously. No, that's the thing. When Mark went over there and asked him, and he said, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
When he came back and we talked about it, I didn't say, yeah, I believe he's natural. But to be perfectly honest, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Right. Because you would like to take people at their word with some of these things.
I chose to just keep my opinion to myself when I did come back and then we did talk about him because I'm like,
but
I'm not going to sit here and call him a liar.
You guys are like outliers in the fact that you knew the guy and you or had, you know, experiences with him, or, you know, you secondary knew him.
We've been in the fitness industry a long time too.
The thing that I wanted to point to was like, he's this kind of guy who's like this lovable heel. He's like, whether we know he's natty or not, it's kind of like, that's just a liver king, let him do his thing.
Yeah.
I always bring this example up when he appeared on UFC. Mm-hmm. It was like they were showing actual celebrities. And then they're showing, oh, look, there's the Liver King. And there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, he's not natural, but it's the Liver King. I want to get a picture with him and all these things. Like, okay, so just to be sure, like, now that we've proven that he's not natty, are you going to take a picture with him? Are you going to do the same thing with him? Maybe, maybe not. But those are the same people that we were kind of trying to be like, hey, like, it wasn't just the lie in that he was taking steroids. It was like his whole setup was a lie. I mean, when he called his shot I think was the most crazy thing. I want to look as good as possible. So I need a coach to help me take my drugs to look as good as possible so I can promote my brand.
Andrew, you mind commenting on this a little bit? Our conversation.
And by all means, Mark, cut me off if I say too much. But no, when Mark came back after hanging out with Liver King at the Liver King Ranch, we were on a walk, and me and Nsima are just like, come on, dude, like, what do you really think is going on here? Because like we wanted Mark's opinion, and he's just like, I think he made a business decision to get in the best shape possible by all means, and he hired, and keep in mind this is well before your guys' video. He's like, he hired a media team. He's like, I'm gonna have them live with me. They're gonna record everything, and I'm gonna get as much attention as possible. And then fast forward, I don't know, get 4 months or so when your guys' video came out. And in that email, everything that he had said is what Mark had said right after he met him. But obviously he didn't tell him this directly. This is just what Mark had like assumed had happened, and it was spot on. And it was just like one of the craziest things where I'm like, Mark, how'd you figure that out? And that's just Mark being Mark sometimes though.
When you read the email, I was like, holy fuck.
Yeah,
I was like, I kind of felt that when I was there because he's really smart. I don't know if either one of you ever.
No, I think he downplays his intelligence significantly.
I asked him, dude. I asked him business stuff, and he just like, he just went off just like anybody else that I've ever met that's really proficient in business. What do you guys think of just the topic in general of an influencer? Is that like, because I think that that's what you guys exposed more so than anything. Maybe we just shouldn't put so much stock into any influencer, whether it be me or you or any of us at this table or any other influencer. Maybe we should be a little bit more cautious about, because we don't know the actions of everybody. We don't know what happens behind closed doors. We don't know if somebody's drinking all the time. We don't know how somebody treats their spouse. The list of things goes on and on and on. And are you going to sit there and try to pick through everyone's moral closet? It would be a very tedious thing to do. Do you think that that is maybe some of what the video was demonstrating as well?
Yeah, like I think anybody should be, I don't know, questioned further as to, like, I don't think you should take anything at face value. You should always educate yourself with as many valuable resources as possible and come to like an informed decision on whatever you do with your body or your lifestyle or whatever it is that you're trying to learn about from a multitude of different credible resources, and kind of come to your own informed conclusion, as opposed to just, you know, blindly trusting one person who might otherwise represent the polar extreme of, you know, ancestral living, or somebody who says like one training style is the only one that works and it's the most superior thing to everything else. Like, I don't know, it's just kind of, you have some onus of responsibility yourself to like further educate yourself as well, to kind of be able to spot the charlatans or the people that are trying to represent the polar extreme of like fill in the blank is the only way to accomplish whatever it is that you're trying to do.
Check out our shit. Head to powerproject.live for the Devil Pussy mug, our merch, and everything Power Project. Enjoy the episode.
I think the too much stock in an influencer is, it depends on what level you're at in your knowledge of the thing. So like when I was just getting started on YouTube, I loved Gary Vee because he was talking about the side hustle and the main hustle, and how you can manipulate what you do to make your side hustle your dream job, whatever that is, and make it the real thing that you end up doing. Fast forward until I've actually done that. now I kind of look back on my interest in Gary Vee with like a bit of nostalgia. I don't really listen to him or watch him anymore. Nothing against him, but that's it. I've kind of evolved past having such an important impact on my life.
You left him in the dust. You left me in the dust too. You told me that.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You're like, what's going on with this guy?
I just, well, because I don't know. It's a weird thing, but I think from the influencer's perspective, and again, I don't really like that term. And I don't think any of us do, like, to call ourselves influencers, but like there's a point for artists where you're trying to continue this machine going and you just forget about the art that you created, like that made you who you were in the first place. And so like what you see a lot of times are people who just want to keep putting out content, keep doing things and keep talking, just keep the fucking algorithm happy. And that is the scariest thing for someone in my position. But that's where we can run into this problem of influencers not actually being who they are. Right. And that's where like you can have people who might take poor advice from people or you know, bad things can happen out of that. I think I wrote down here like punditry is like what you would say if
You always putting out these wild words, buddy. I love it.
yeah, so
Let's go.
So like
Punditry.
like well, you know what a
Semicolon.
you know what a pundit is, like a
Like a political pundit.
Yes, exactly. There are people who have like really great ideas that are middle of the road. They're very, you know, they make you think, they're good philosophies. They get a ton of attention on them. Then they pick a team and they hop in on and become like somewhat of a pundit. They become the thing, the antithesis of the thing that got them where they were in the first place.
Yes.
And that's a scary thing. Like, I don't want to become that, but at the same time, I want to make a living and I want to feed the algoritee, if that makes sense.
The Punditry Podcast.
Yeah.
PUND ATREE.
Rewind.
Pundit.
I mean,
Panditry.
I'm sure you like worry about this too. Like although I asked you this and you said you had like plenty of content ideas, you just like don't have enough time.
Right? Yeah, no, I've got pages, dude.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
good.
a great feeling. You know, that's awesome. I the thing is like I get scared because I wanna expand to different things and I don't want people to be like, hey, why the fuck are you talking about philosophy?
Well,
on
you
here?
will inevitably encounter, if you've gone really deep down the rabbit hole of fill in the blank topic, as you deviate from that, whoever subscribed to you for that thing is, where's the content on this? This is why I subscribed.
Yep.
Yeah.
I only see this once every 2 months now. Fuck you.
Former power lifter. Like, you know how many comments you've
Oh,
gotten
God.
of like, why aren't we in the fucking strongest gym in the West anymore? Bring back the squat. You know what I mean? But
Get fat. The people want me to get fat.
how do you experience with that? Because now you're a runner.
Yeah, I don't care.
You don't care.
I'm rich, bitch. I got other shit going on.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Hey,
Seriously.
your YouTube channel is not very old, right? Like, I try to look back and sift through, and I'm thinking like, man, Derek's been around for a little while, and I'm like, oh, he kind of has been in for a little while, but maybe it was more on Instagram, and maybe it was
6
more...
years almost.
Okay,
Yeah.
and your YouTube channel is only like 2 or 3 years old, maybe.
6 years.
Did you
Oh,
delete
it
old
is,
videos
okay.
or something?
Huh?
Did like you couldn't find videos from
No,
6 years ago?
I watched some of the older
You
videos on
can
this
sort by
channel,
old
but-
now on YouTube.
It's boomer shit.
I don't,
You just didn't do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Where did it first start with you? And what was some of the reasons why you were putting out content on YouTube or wherever else you were putting it?
So for me, I just had some time on my hands and started writing blog articles. And for me, when I started writing those, it was based on a lot of the stuff I was interested in at the time. Like, I was following some of the male self-improvement channels and blogs more so at the time, because that was what was most prevalent for, I don't know, the people who were the most influential at the time actually had like really big blogs, not YouTube channels, which is interesting. So back then I followed certain individuals.
What years was the blog thing? Sorry if I missed it.
2012, maybe. Or
I
something?
followed them from like 2012 to 2016.
Yeah. I remember that time where like blogs were everything.
Like Tim Ferriss and shit.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't follow him specifically, but yeah, in that kind of like realm. He was more like, I don't know, I guess I don't follow him closely enough to say what he does, but my perception was more on like the biohacking side of things and like really, really fringe stuff potentially.
Yeah.
It was
and
tough
I-
to find that information. Hard,
Yeah.
right?
And I wasn't really into entrepreneurial stuff at that time yet. So it was more just like, how do I, gain muscle, lose fat, dress better, get girls, speak more fluently in social interactions, etc. So stuff like that I was interested in, and I found myself going down rabbit holes and, being, on forums and stuff with other guys who kind of had similar aligned interests. And eventually I had what I felt to be enough experience to start writing about my trials and tribulations of doing the same thing. And then I started my blog, and it was basically just, as far as how it came to be, I was just looking for, names at the time that sort of represented what I was sort of interested in, or what the brand overarchingly could be summarized as. So it was like lifting stuff, lifting, getting jacked, getting lean, lifestyle, dating, self-improvement. So it's sort of just one of the URLs that was available was More Plates, More Dates. And it sounded, it rhymed. I thought it would be memorable.
And it is.
Yeah. And at the time there was like I guess there might be now as well, but at the time it was just the people I followed had these names that were, rhyming or, I don't know, somewhat gimmicky or whatever. Like, I don't really know how to represent it, but stuff that was memorable and kind of just like cumulatively summed up what they do. Like one of the channels I followed was a Good Looking Loser, and then there was Bold and Determined, Danger and Play, like some of these things that were just like catchy, brand names, I guess. So I just came up with that, ran with it, and then eventually, after writing some blog articles, one of those guys actually recommended I film videos with it. I was like, should I film on YouTube too? And they said, fuck yeah, of course you should. Similar to Gary Vee says, publish everywhere, 1,000,000 times a day.
Yeah.
So anyway, at the time, I basically just repurposed my written articles and would read them essentially on YouTube. And then eventually I got to the point where I was better at talking than writing as far as a time efficiency standpoint. And it also just didn't come across as organic reading off of your screen. So I sort of transitioned away from writing, and then it turned more into this just mainly focusing on YouTube and the other video-based platforms. And then that's kind of how it came to be, and it sort of just took off from there. But it was slow. It's not like it took off. It was like many years before it took off.
And I think some of the stuff you were talking about early on is stuff that was kind of hard for people to find without digging through a blog or a thread. You had to kind of continually dig, and then you found out, oh, this guy actually knows his shit. It seems like he knows a ton, especially when it came to like pharmaceuticals or something like that. You would see that someone clearly knows. Occasionally you might see somebody that really knew a lot about training, hypertrophy or strength training. And you're like, holy shit. But you had to like really dig deep a couple years back to try to find this information. And I remember some of your videos where you talked about male pattern baldness, erectile dysfunction, acne. Like you brought a lot of these things. It's not like no one was talking about them, but you brought a lot of these things to the forefront, which I think is awesome because you highlighted an area where it's like there's a lot of men that are trying for self-improvement, but for some reason, especially if it comes to like looks, we get weird about trying to like ask your buddy, like, dude, how can I like look a little bit better? Like you can't just say that to your friend for some reason. I want to look a little bit better tomorrow. I got a date. Like some reason
guys would get
that.
shamed for like hair loss stuff. Like, oh, you're just go bald. Like, why do you care so much? Or
no, I would. Honest to God, dude, it's so wild to me. I definitely am like feeling like the hair recede back on me, and like my comfort in talking with my friends. And
just like feels heard right
and
now.
And just other people like with talking about it has like skyrocketed. And honest to God, I think you changed that. Just like being like you never were like shame and any of that never came into the conversation. You were just like, here's what works. Finasteride, derma rolling, minoxidil, here's the shampoo I use, here's what I use for this, and this. And like your comment section was everyone being like, I fucking love that we just are just talking about this. Like balding is not a bad thing. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like how making fun of someone for balding is like honestly ridiculous because it's not their choice. It's like it's not like they have
it's
a bad.
The same thing with snoring as well. Snoring, people get like really made fun of and teased a lot about snoring, and sometimes it has to do with body weight, but sometimes it has to do with like you just train hard, you lift a lot. I mean, they don't really know what the exact thing is for sleep apnea, at least as far as I know. They don't know exactly what causes it. So there's a lot of these things that they're like medical, and it's like, man, that's like you just like picking on me, you're making fun of me, and I don't have no control over this.
And Derek like just openly talking about it, I thought was really cool. Another thing too, like you told us a story. It was like you told me and Chris at dinner the story about cologne and when you were a bouncer and you were like testing colognes.
Yeah.
What was?
Oh, so you were a bouncer though?
You have some nice cologne on today.
before.
Oh, you're trying to work me.
Oh, you think I have nice cologne?
Yeah.
It's actually his. Yeah, it's his
hey.
brand.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, you have a brand of cologne?
Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah. It's really good.
What's it called?
Has some endocrine
I hear it, I'm wearing it.
disruptors, but I'll send it to you.
No lavender, right?
Oh, it does.
No.
Okay, good.
You gotta smell
All
it.
right, get it.
Yeah, you gotta sniff this guy.
I'm always representing. Yeah.
So this is gonna make my estrogen go through the roof.
Nice.
I don't think so, bro. You're on TRT. You're good.
How do you know?
You can touch as many receipts as you want.
Yeah.
Is people
Mark,
people
but you just
think-
came out as
emails?
natural in our last episode.
Yeah, you're natty.
You said you were lying about the TRT.
I
the whole
lied to
time.
my brother. I lied on Bigger, Stronger, Faster. I've been natural the entire time.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Oh.
Damn.
So
Just another charlatan.
what was that story? Because that was, I thought that was amazing. Chris,
Punder tree? Is that what it's called?
Story. What was the story?
We're so fucked.
I can't stop thinking about that word. It's gonna be in my head the whole time.
Well, basically, so I guess this is just an example of where one of my, tangents of content came from. Is back in the day, I was, going down the self-improvement rabbit hole. You sort of look at anything you can do to maximize, appeal to women or just, social status or physique or whatever it is. And expectedly you arrive at, hygiene, smelling good, stuff like that was one of the tangents. And for me, I guess I became somewhat of like a fragrance connoisseur. So I would buy a lot of different ones and test them on dates. And then my like ultimate field test was I would wear a different one every night when I was bouncing and then see how many compliments I would get compared to the other ones and kind of like compare performance and like compliments and I don't know, just like in general, I would put them like tit for tat against each other and just, see what women thought. And then I would create this kind of like consolidated list or ranking system of like which ones were the best for which scenarios. And then that sort of tangented into content. Like some of my old videos, you can find videos of me getting chicks to rate fragrances. I was just like walk around my school campus, just be like, what do you think of this? Rate it out of 10. Compare it to this
So
one.
that's what I mean. It's like when people like you now have a fragrance.
Yeah.
And I wear it.
What's
I
it
love
called? What's the name? Because usually these things are like fierce and shit like that.
Intelligent is the brand, and then Carbon is the name.
Nice.
And
Okay.
yeah, and what's like people be like, what does a fucking YouTuber know about like scents and fragrances and like he doesn't know that world. Like motherfucker went out and beta tested them in real. You know what I mean? Like who the fuck else would I trust more than the guy who's like, yes, she said I smell nice. Like let me get my notepad out. I didn't fucking write them down, but I think that's so amazing. That's so amazing. Like no one else does that shit.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I when you told us that story, I was like,
I don't position myself as like a fragrance expert, by the way. I'm just like somewhat of a connoisseur / fanatic, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, people would trust the recommendation of somebody who has done that sort of thing.
yeah, exactly.
Presumably.
And like, I don't think anyone else has done that.
But like,
which is pretty
I
amazing.
used to watch channels where like there's this guy named Jeremy Fragrance, and he's one of the
Oh
ones.
yeah.
See, like the white guy with the
Fragrance.
hair like that or something?
Probably.
Maybe?
Yeah, what a great name.
Jeremy Fragrance.
Yeah,
is-
so he's like the premier fragrance influencer, and yeah, like I used to watch his videos, and he would talk to girls and get them to
Dude,
rate.
Andrew, pull him up, dude.
This guy looks
Okay.
great.
This guy is a
yeah.
legend.
Okay, so this guy more recently has gone on an interesting tangent of I don't know.
Dude, Andrew, there's a
He
video
looks
of
like
him.
he
He's
smells
like,
good.
I masturbate, but I don't come. And
Oh man.
he's like, and I'm really trying to figure out.
Is he
my
all about
life.
no fap?
No, his
my
no.
God.
His whole thing, like he'll be discussing a fragrance, and then it'll divulge into like some very like psychoanalytical problems that he's been having like lately. He'll be like, this one is like very good, and I don't know, man, I'm in a weird place in my life.
What the hell?
And I swear, if you can find this, it's like
Use
his
that
most
guy as my
viral thing.
therapist.
He's
That sounds
a-
awesome.
He's a good
He's like,
dude, but
I like masturbate, but I don't come.
Edgy, man. Fucking edging's great.
Keeping himself tense.
yeah, he would edge before videos and then tell you that he just did it.
Yeah. It's like
Holy
I did
shit.
1,000 push-ups today. I feel amazing. I feel great.
Yeah.
Like, the
You're
top,
so cool.
the TikTok comments are all like I think he did like 13 lines before this. Like it's the number of
Oh,
like,
shit.
lines of cocaine. That's like the like
People
meme
think
that
he's
goes
on
around.
drugs now,
Yeah.
whereas he acts a lot different than he used to.
Well, I'm sure the
around
fumes.
back-
I hope he's good mentally.
I fucking do too. He's a gem, and
Yeah.
he's like, he honest to God, like comes off as like a very good guy, like very nice, like very caring and into fragrances. But like recently, he's kind of taken off on like more of like the meme side of things. But
Yeah, and he like leans into it because he knows, at least on TikTok, it's how you go viral if you become a meme and you do some of this like crazy shit.
Yeah.
Which is almost unfortunate because like I saw him as like the professional.
I didn't
like,
even know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know he existed as like a actual
Dude, his first videos were just like very structured, controlled. Like,
Alpha M was also pretty good with the fragrances.
Yeah.
I remember him. Okay, R.I.P. Kevin Samuels, but I got a lot of fragrance stuff from Kevin Samuels before he kind of knocked out. You guys know who he is? I know you know who he is. But yeah, he was an old red pill cat. Died recently, but yeah, he was all about that fragrance shit. Makes a difference.
Did you like look into like the pheromones and that sort of thing too in fragrances? Is that legit?
yeah, I don't know if that's legit. I'm skeptical.
Yeah, me
So,
too.
Yeah.
Okay,
curious.
this is a stupid aside. You heard of vabbing?
Of what?
Vabbing.
No.
You've never heard of vabbing?
Oh,
You, Zach?
dude. You
So-
need to do a video on this one too.
It's apparently, and this would be actually great for you. You do some research. This would be killer. Women
It
take
depends on what research.
Women will go out and they will take their vaginal juices
Okay.
and put it on their neck and
Can I get an
areas
amen?
and like behind their ears because apparently that scent will attract men. It's like when they go around men and they have their vaginal juices around their,
So you're
there's-
saying I should just like put my ball sack?
I'm not saying you should do. I'm just saying maybe I don't know. Maybe ball
wonder why you
smell
smell so good.
would be. I don't know. Who knows? But vabbing is actually a thing.
One of the great things about Sacramento is we have cum trees. So if you're like, especially Davis, California, like you're walking down the street and like you're like, is everyone whacking off on this corner? Like, what the fuck's going on here?
That's funny you say that because where I'm from, there was this one bush I used to walk past and it smelled absurdly like cum. And we always were like, this is the cum bush as we'd like walk past it to go to school every
The
day.
cum bush.
I mean, if you
can
think
look
about it,
Andrew.
like those pollen, like those days, like where like there's a lot of pollen, it's just a bunch of tree cum, right?
Yeah,
It's essentially what pollen is.
I think so.
We need
you're
to
right.
real quick. Why does everyone know what cum smells like here? That means, right? That means that because when you don't just that means each of us is probably taking a sniff, right?
Yeah, how
Well,
else would
I mean,
you know?
you know.
Right.
close,
Thank
getting
you.
close.
We've had this conversation, Smokey.
I try
Remember?
Try and finagle your way out of explaining how you got a whiff of it.
Okay, all right. Actual serious question though. Let's say you're wiping your ass and you accidentally get a little bit of poop on your face.
Oh, snot. Yeah.
You got to quick.
You gotta quick and wash your
gotta go.
hands.
It's really hard to get it off too.
Yeah, just god damn.
It is.
Like why did you smell it if you knew it was going to smell like shit? Like why did you do it? I don't know.
It's male curiosity. It is male curiosity.
so fucked, man.
All
Or
right, but
disgusting.
I'm actually curious, Derek. When did you get into lifting? Like you yourself into actually lifting in the gym? When was that for you?
Probably grade 11, maybe.
Grade 11?
Yeah.
Well, okay, grade
So
11.
that's like, I don't know,
16, 17?
17 years old
Yeah.
or something.
okay.
Fat or skinny?
Oh, I was a twig.
Such a Canadian
Ooh,
answer,
yeah.
by the way. Grade 11.
Yeah. Now, I'm curious about this because we've been having this conversation where, influencers nowadays they'll lift for a little bit, but their favorite influencer lifts for a little bit, and then they're like, "All right, guys, I'm gonna get on TRT," and you shouldn't do it. You should lift for a while. You shouldn't do it, but then young cats look at that and they're like, "Well, if you're doing it, I'm gonna do it." So for you, way before, because now you're 30 something, right?
30.
You're 30. When did you start learning and using PEDs after you started lifting?
Earlier than I should have, but it was that's part of the reason why my content exists too. It's stuff that I wish I didn't do in hindsight, that if this information existed, I could have otherwise convinced myself to be natural until at least wait till your fucking brain is fully developed, you know?
Yeah,
That sort of
yeah.
thing. So for me, it's not like it was so absurd where it was like, oh, 17 years old, get on gear, but it was at least, it was a few years and I would have waited way longer if I could go back in time for sure.
There's a lot to talk about here because what are a couple things that maybe you did where you're like, man, that was not only was it foolish, but it had repercussions too.
Well, hopefully no repercussions, and that's sort of why I like pulled way back before it got to a point where I would, because at least I've become more cognizant of this is like a cumulative thing. Like you've talked about many times how you could inject like a fucking 10 vials of test and you wouldn't die. But like over time using, you know, high doses of gear will eventually catch up to you and you'll end up with, you know, cardiovascular disease or kidney damage or hepatotoxicity with your liver or whatever it is, or neurodegeneration. These are things that are cumulative and like insidiously build up in the background. So for me, it was just being hyper aware of that and then reeling way back and becoming like more okay with what is not representative of like a, you know, enhanced, only could be sustained with gear look sort of thing or performance, etc. So I'm not saying that's bad necessarily if that's, you know, what somebody wants to, the ROI on the risk for that, or they're a competitor or whatever. But yeah, it was just becoming aware of that. At least when I did, I'm fortunate enough that I wish I knew earlier, but hopefully no actual damage that is like significant. But just being aware of that stuff definitely changed my trajectory and like my mindset around it.
Do you know if there's research behind people being on testosterone or people having using exogenous testosterone and doing so for many, many years, like decades? Like, do we have, I know like we got like old bodybuilders and old powerlifters and stuff like that, but do we have information on people that have taken it for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years and so on?
We'll have case reports of people who show up who have, you know, end up dying or something brutal and they find out what they were doing and then they'll infer that it was because of this, but nothing really controlled where you have, you know, placebo group and 500 milligrams of test for 20 years group. And like, this was the difference. So no, but what you can extrapolate out though, is in the studies, they have studies upwards of a few months using like 600 milligrams of test, I think is the most notable one. And you can see kind of what happens to the blood work and then extrapolate out what that might lead to down the line. And there are a lot of studies on, I don't know, just like the cumulative buildup of these things and what could happen. So we don't have like a well-controlled test, unfortunately, but there is data that, like, again, rodent models, but you can see kind of what happens to rodents who don't do anything, and then they have these controlled settings where they do stuff like that and then show, well, this is the difference. And, you know, it's not a human, but, you know, we sort of see similar outcomes just in a far more drawn out time frame in bodybuilders who, you know, really abuse shit. So you can kind of infer like, okay, this is probably what's building up on the back end that I'm unaware of right now, or things to be cognizant of, like blood pressure that is, you know, just left unchecked for years, or, you know, checking your blood work very consistently, getting organ imaging, stuff like that is often overlooked entirely. But I think a lot of the damage could be attenuated if people are more mindful of that stuff.
And maybe the gist of some of it is like, you know, if someone starts to take performance enhancing drugs and they are just a recreational lifter or maybe even like a power lifter or something like that, most people will take some and they'll get some good results, and they may get themselves into a point where they're like, hey, let me try a little bit more. And they may end up lifting a little bit more. They may end up being a little bit bigger. Mostly that's what you do see. But once you start to really rev up the amount of testosterone that you take, your body starts to do all kinds of other things to counteract the amount of testosterone you have running through your veins. Can you explain some of that? And then maybe also explain how like sometimes there's a lot of like mitigation in that, because that's what Nsima and I and Andrew, we've talked about on the show before. Like once you start to throw in some of this pharmacology, like things start to get a little confusing. So you might want to really double, triple, quadruple think about this and really do your research before you get into this stuff, because it's not necessarily always as simple as I'm just going to take a little bit of test.
Yeah. And one thing I do want to circle back to is there studies on what it does long term? One thing I can say is TRT, like sometimes we'll conflate steroids and TRT and vice versa, but like actual therapeutic TRT, there are studies to show that you would probably be healthier or better off than if you left your deficiency. So that is notable.
If you were deficient, though, right?
Yeah.
And the determination of deficient is also subjective because it's a snapshot.
Yes.
A lot of people are just haphazardly getting on because they're interpreting a like micro speck of time of their entire life. And it's like, oh, my T was 292 on one morning of one day, like equals I need test. It's like, no, probably.
I'm going to blast it.
Yeah, like maybe get a more comprehensive picture, make sure that you timed it right. Like, did you get your blood test at, 3 p.m. versus like right when you woke up? Get a more informed assessment of what's going on, especially upstream too. Some people just look at the test in their blood and don't look at, the signaling from their brain to their testes or what else is going on in their life that could have otherwise contributed to it. But yes, sorry, sort of diverting.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure I added that in because some people who are actually on therapeutic replacement might be like, oh shit, like, like what's going to happen to me if I take this? It's definitely warranted from everything I've seen, not a doctor here, of course, for somebody who literally has a deficiency, using it at a therapeutic level relative to leaving themselves in that state. It's going to be, from what I understand, like similar to a woman going through menopause. Like if they leave themselves deprived of hormones, Alzheimer's goes through the roof, cardiovascular disease goes through the roof. Like there are so many things that are not going to be supported adequately with deficient hormones. So it's like absolutely going to be warranted in that scenario.
And can you explain like what happens when people start to really rev their testosterone levels up?
Yeah, like in general, we see in like a dose-dependent manner, neurodegeneration. Like you're not going to have your brain function is just going to. It's not like you're guaranteed to become an idiot or something, but it's like it's not healthy to sustain like super physiological androgen levels perpetually, and it's kind of like especially your sympathetic nervous system gets a little bit more redlined the more free androgens are circulating around your body, and it becomes more difficult to get high quality sleep, which indirectly has like a vicious circle effect on the back end with other things. And this is all, it's multifactorial because it's not just the gear, it's also what the gear does to the health things in your body, physiologic processes, which then on the back end will make the other stuff even worse. And, it's just like a vicious circle effect. Like it could cause, if you're revving yourself too hard, you weigh, way more than you should, what your body would otherwise sustain. Without those, you could have significant heart stress, which, increases the size of your heart itself and it can no longer pump effectively, or you have more demands to support the tissue you have that it can't keep up with, or your kidneys start deteriorating.
Red blood cell count goes up.
Yeah, or
blood pressure goes up.
Blood viscosity goes up, and all of a sudden you have like sludgy blood that's impossible to get. It's not impossible, but it's much more difficult to get around and actually get around to oxygenate tissues. Like there are a lot of things that go unchecked. And then some people, even when they try to attenuate that by bloodletting to get their blood to where it should be, they end up making themselves deficient and like actually anemic borderline. Their ferritin levels drop too because they're just like, therapeutically phlebotomizing so frequently, they end up becoming deficient in something, which on the back end fucks them up in something else. Like it's, you need to understand this stuff, and it's pretty fucking complicated, but people will just start using it because they, want the gains. So,
and the odd thing about TRT and its prevalence now is that it's become like a supplement for some people. It's become a supplement to replace getting good sleep, getting good nutrition, sunlight, all these things that if you spend time changing certain habits and you give it a good amount of time, your T will probably come up. But I know some people who are like, I got to get 4 or 5 hours of sleep because I got work to do. So I'm just going to go this route because it's going to help me feel better. And it makes you wonder because I can understand the person who's like, let's say they're driven, they work super hard, they can't get 6 to 8 hours of quality sleep, and their test is tanked because of that, because of all the other things that happen. And then they're like, let me just hop on TRT. I can understand it, but from the health and fitness side, it's hard to get behind that.
Yeah.
I have like a little devil's advocate idea here that just kind of popped up in my mind. It's like, you could tell someone that goes out on the weekend and drinks a little bit, you can access much more happiness without that, and you just have to teach yourself things and do different things in your life, and you'll have that level of happiness all the time or whatever. And that's absolutely valid. You absolutely can. But are we going to demonize the person that decides to drink a little bit on the weekend and have fun? It's definitely a balance. I think something I really want to talk about is like, we're at a time with steroids, in that it's very similar to DARE. If you think about DARE, that program to a lot of extent like failed.
Yeah.
And abstinence, like talking about abstinence from sex, that failed as well. And then there was this kind of grace period where we were figuring out like the openness of all of those. And like, we're still kind of figuring out both drugs and sex. and now we're beginning to try to start that figuring out of androgens. And so what we have to determine is like, is the abstinence route the good route? Or is
when
the
you say
talking
abstinence, expand upon
like,
that within when it comes to this.
Everyone is clamoring for The Rock and other guys to just be like, I take steroids.
Yeah.
Right. But the negative outcome of that is obvious. It's the kids being like, yeah, he even warned me, like, I shouldn't do it. I shouldn't do any of this stuff, but I'm going to do it. It's because it's The Rock. You know, it's like you were saying, like, I go to bars and I drink and I do hook up with chicks, but like, you shouldn't do that. You know, every kid's going to be like, wait, what'd you say? You know,
what's the key? Alcohol? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Okay, cool. I'm going to go
down.
do that. But I think that it might be, and this is what I want to ask you guys, it might be the lesser evil of the two, right? Where we don't know, but like the fake natty aspect of it might be worse than saying, hey, I'm open about this. Don't do it. Even though maybe some kids start to do it or whatever, people who are not ready. I don't know the answer. It's the ethical dilemma. I brought it up with Derek on my show, and like, still something we have to figure out. And I think it's something we have to talk about.
I would say I don't think it's anybody's business either. Like you make your own choice and what you do. But
people are gonna keep poking and prodding.
And
that'll never stop.
Right. I agree 100%. I think you would just have to ignore it. I'm just saying, like, if you were to try to do something now and you were online and you just didn't share it, people are going to assume whatever, but we don't have to address stuff.
But I think
you don't have to have an opinion on it. You don't have to say anything back to that person.
Real quick, Mark, I'm curious about this because, for example,
I wish it was that way.
Wait. You mentioned The Rock, right? He's kind of in the health and fitness industry, but he's an entertainer. Mark Wahlberg, I think I heard you talk about him with Rogan. He's in the entertainment industry. He's not he's kind of in health and fitness, but he doesn't pay attention to stuff. Like, he's not here consistently talking about this. But when you're in the fitness industry and you're a guy that's consistently in the gym and doing all these things, and then people are asking you, how are you that big? If it's not just your nutrition and all these things, I think if you're in this, you're not an entertainer, you're not an actor, you're not fucking one of these people. If you're in this, it feels like you can't leave that out, even though it's going to affect the 19-year-old that's just getting into this, that wants to get big fast. If you're in this, you can't avoid it.
I was kind of disagree. I don't think you have to say anything.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, there are
just
people
let
that
the
just
comments
don't
fly.
But you do, because the moment you go on a podcast, you get asked. Like,
that's okay.
And then
no comment.
And then you lie.
No, you say no comment. Hey, have you ever done them? No comment. I don't want to answer that question. I don't want to address it.
You don't think that answers the question?
Good. Perfect. Yeah, let the person come to their own conclusion, whatever way they want.
Got it.
So that would be the best route.
Let them write the story for
to circle you. Back to the most recent.
Because also, real
Liver
quick,
King, that would have been a good answer for him.
I believe so.
No comment.
But real quick, think about an individual like Bradley Martin.
Take.
Think about an individual like Bradley Martin.
Right.
He's never talked about that, or he's never even talked about himself using anything.
Right.
I don't think people have actually even really asked him in content. And if he has, he probably doesn't say anything.
He usually kind of jokes about it, I think.
Just jokes about it.
Yeah.
He is literally someone who has taken the no comment route. And look at him now.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I'm saying that is somebody who is doing it in practice right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a good point. Both of those are good points.
I think a lot of people just have a hard time with the information, and I think that's why the Liver King may have felt like he needed to lie. I remember when I was a kid, there was the Power Team, and my parents are Christian, and I grew up going to church and everything. And the Power Team would go around from one church to another, and these big jacked guys, and they would rip telephone books in half, and
that's awesome.
They would do all this stuff on stage, and they were jacked. I mean, maybe there were a couple guys that were drug free, maybe, but I doubt that any of them were. And they would preach outwardly against it. So there would be another situation where it's like, this is not great because they're outwardly preaching against it. But for me personally, seeing that era of like Hulk Hogan and the professional wrestlers, and hearing about Lyle Alzado, who was a famous case where he said his growth hormone led to his brain tumor, and a lot of the stuff that was circling around. There they are, the Power Team.
Crush for Jesus.
Yeah, they're like 300 pounds
awesome.
and 300 pounds and yoked.
This guy throws in some kicks too. It's fucking awesome.
But for me, when I was I was already lifting at this age, because I started lifting really young. 12, 13 years old or so, obviously had an impact on me, but I never thought in my head about, I never thought about taking steroids because of these individuals when I was young. I always thought if I was ever going to do it, it would be something I would do educated as an adult.
What?
The power team, brother.
There's the.
It's the Lord Jesus supporting my strength.
How old is this?
Like
It's like
80s,
90s.
90s?
Looks like 90s.
Yeah. But okay, real quick though, this is an interesting thing because when it does come to people should be open. People have been open. For example, I brought up Brandon Harding before. Brandon Harding decided to take TRT or whatever when he was like maybe 23. I think 3 years into lifting, he decided to hop on. And he was open and he was honest about it. And there are probably some of his younger viewers who decided to get on. But also, you have people on the other side of things like Russ Swole. Also, I want to apologize to Greg. On one of our podcasts, I mentioned that he made a natty or not on Paul Sklar, and he said, but Greg actually said Paul was natural. But Russ Swole is an individual, pull him up, please, who consistently gets drug tested.
Russell or he, yeah.
Russell or he consistently gets drug tested because he's a IPF pro. He probably doesn't even want me to bring his name up in this conversation, but he looks crazy. He's been lifting for a long time. He's been an athlete for a long time. Greg made a natty or not on him. That initial natty or not, Greg said that there's absolutely no chance that Russ is natural because Greg didn't actually understand that Russ consistently gets drug tested. He made a video maybe a few weeks later because he found out, wow, this guy's always getting drug tested and he's always randomly drug tested and he's natural. God, look at that fucker. He's 5'7", 200 pounds, right? I can see in your eyes, you're like, what the fuck?
No, I know about Russell.
You know about,
Orhe
okay,
well,
you know
yeah.
about him. But this is the thing.
Insanely strong.
Insanely strong. There are people out here who can look amazing, who have been doing this for a long time, and they're natural, right? But everything gets lumped in this industry. I think that's part. I've seen some of your content, and it seems that you've distanced yourself from the natty or not type content. And my assumption is because it is purely speculative, and you can't really know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, a lot of it is just like, even when I first got into it, it was just people asking for my opinion, like no different than if you're, watching UFC with your bros or whatever, you watch like The Rock movie, you're just like, oh, what do you think about this? And it's like, at a point, answering every single person who's asking, you might as well just make a video is what I thought. It's like, this is what I think. And then people just really liked it. So, so that's sort of how it stemmed. But yeah, some of it, it's highly speculative, and I like to be more, conclusive in what I'm talking about. So oftentimes I would rather talk about, if I'm going to be talking about something to do with, there's like blood work to reinforce or something that's more like science-based rather than just speculation. So, like I've like highly considered just, going the full-blown information dense route and not doing that stuff whatsoever. So I don't know what that looks like in the future, but yeah.
What do you guys think about somebody that is an entrepreneur that makes tremendous amounts of money? It's well known that they make a lot of money and they just never tell anybody how they make it.
Awesome.
Like, can they keep that to themselves? Like, so in the case of a steroid, like, let's say you're Lawrence Taylor and you play a lot of your career on crack.
No.
Can you keep that?
I know where you're going with this, because like it is like The Rock. You're like we're just continually beckoning him to say that he takes gear, and it's like I think pretty obvious that he does, but there's like we'll never know, like for sure. No one will ever know, but. What if he just never talks about it ever?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a very strange thing.
I think he may have talked about it.
He said
at
he
times.
experimented as a teenager and
Right.
then
He just kind of left it there.
but then never did it again after. But it was just interesting because to make a specific statement, it's one thing to just brush it off and deflect, but then when you make specific statements like, why would you use tests for replacement therapy to double your test when you could just use the 9 essential tenets? And it's like, well, you don't do that.
What is possible? Do we have any idea what's possible? Because I've been around a lot of people that have
Like
said
naturally?
yeah, that have said they're natural. John Cena is one of them. He's been a longtime friend, and John has in his gym. He's got all these tests, not testosterone. He's got all these tests on his wall where he was actually supposedly third party tested, not by Vince McMahon in the locker room. Supposedly he was tested for performance enhancing drugs in whatever different ways they do that. And he's got all these tests that show that he's never been on them or whatever.
My impression of him was always deflecting, because the only clip I've seen of him getting grilled was he said, "You're not," I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was like, "You're not gonna hear me say I don't do it, but you'll never be able to." I don't know exactly what it
I
was
know
like
the clip you're talking about.
Yeah, they had a hotel room clip, and I think it was like edited a bunch of times.
I could find it, but it just basically the gist of it was like what was aired was kind of what you were explaining, but like they had to air the whole thing where it was not even close to what he said. It was just cut up very, very like.
I covered the full interview at one point.
Okay,
but yeah, they did ask him about gear, and he deflected, which was fine, I guess. Like you can say whatever he wants, but it was very much not yes or no from what I remember.
Somebody made this really good point.
I could be wrong, by the way. I'm just remembering it how I saw it, and it was very much like a half answer, which you can take from that what you will, sort of thing.
He basically, I mean, not so much anymore. He's a little older. He's out of wrestling, but he had like 20-inch arms. He's got a small waist. He definitely is a mutant. Like his wrists are really big. His kneecaps are
like,
really
as far
big.
as I know, he's not calling people subprimal if they're on TRT.
he's not doing that. Yeah,
Right. The
Power Project family, quality sleep can make everything with your health and fitness easier, which is why we've partnered with Hostage Tape. Now, we've been talking about mouth tape for years and nasal breathing for years. But one of the problems that we've had with tape is we all like to rock facial hair, and a lot of the mouth tapes we would use would fall off of our face at night. Hostage Tape doesn't fall off your face if you have a beard or if you're not a man and you don't. I'm joking. You don't need a beard, right? But either way, Hostage Tape makes sense. It'll stick to your face when you're asleep. You'll have better quality sleep because you're breathing through your nose all night long. It is a no-brainer. And if you head to hostagetape.com/power project, you'll be able to get the Power Project annual deal, which is a year's supply of Hostage Tape for 55 cents a day. You'll be saving $150 on the typical yearly deal. You're going to get 2 free tins and a blindfold. It's a no-brainer. So head there right now and get yourself some Hostage Tape. Links in the description along with the podcast show notes. Shut your f***ing mouth when you sleep. Enjoy the show.
You can go ahead and crank that thing down because it keeps getting loose on you.
Yeah.
So just
I don't
crank
know
it
which
down.
way. This way?
Just tight. Lefty loosey, righty tighty.
Yeah, it's just
That made it
seems like
worse.
it's getting
That's
looser.
worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is nice.
Now it's all up in your
There you go.
nose.
Jacket for him, Mark. Jacket.
There you go.
There you go.
So somebody,
Thank you.
when I was getting into weightlifting, Reddit weightlifting was like my place for information. This was right around 2013, 2014. And someone was like, man, I really want to know what's possible naturally. Like, what lifters could I look at? And somebody answers it and says, well, you're probably going to have to go back to around 1950 to absolutely know, because even then, the people had already been like experimenting, but I think it was Dianabol, or there were some drugs that were like the first to kick off, and it was just easy. It's just like, or certain pro hormones.
People didn't even think about it, I don't think. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can gather that, like, if you want to see like the strongest people ever, guarantee that they're natural, you have to go back in time and look at potentially like Paul Anderson or something. But even then, like, you don't know. I would say, yeah, maybe not even bodybuilders, like strength athletes, weightlifters, things like that. I think that's like the only way you can like guarantee.
That's also really interesting, because like the fatter athlete, you would never even really assume that they take steroids, or the general population would never suspect some of the guys that are real big, because they got tons of muscle and body fat.
Right.
That kind of covers up the muscle.
Yeah. And like what you look like, we know, like doesn't determine whether you do PEDs. Like Lance Armstrong didn't look like he did PEDs, but he did. And that was never the point, was to like look like a bodybuilder, but of course people kind of associate it with it. But one thing I can say is, like, I'm from a sport where, like, I just on my podcast talked about this guy Valentin Hristov and his account of the drugs that he took on the Bulgarian team. And it's absolutely insane, the amount of drugs. Max was just on the show saying, you want to know what they do in Russia? They found out whose parents were cool, and they started giving kids right at puberty drugs. That's right out of the mouth of a Russian coach. Okay, like this is not just some sort of, oh, we don't know what they're doing or whether they're doing. It is embedded within my sport. So to think like we're changing things, and it's like we're too far gone. So we will never know what's like naturally possible unless we're literally having someone piss and take their blood every single day, at least twice a day for like 2-3 straight years. I know of some athletes who they were like pretty much using the same hole to like blood test them. That's how many times they were getting tested. They're out in the UK. Like these guys were literally getting tested every single day in certain places and certain times because UKADA wanted to fucking get them. And the same thing. Yeah,
that like
UK,
oh, okay.
Yeah, anti-doping agency. And it's a kind of a similar situation in certain times with USADA. You can obviously get around it. Everyone can get around it. So like, it sucks because you could say, even with Russell, like I'm not going to say he's on drugs. I'm not going to say like, that's between him and God, you know? Because like, no matter how many tests you take, someone can always say there's a way to get around tests. You know,
that's the nature of this whole Natty or not
exactly
on the internet, though.
But I will say this though, like in weightlifting specifically, people have to understand that it is different situations from country to country, and it has been that way for a long time. And every time I bring this up, I'm sorry, I'm going on a little rant here, but every time I bring this up, people are like, "You like sound like you're just like coping for the US and you think US is good and everyone else is bad." It's like,
America.
Dude, we're the biggest abusers of steroids on the planet. I'm not saying that, but if you want to compare what USADA does compared to what the Bulgarians have done in the past, or even like the current Bulgarian team, or even the current Colombian team, or whatever, like
China,
it's not even close. Yeah. It's not even close, and it's so obvious to me. I'm not excusing anything, but if we can't see that advantage there, it's ridiculous, you know? I'm sorry, that was just a big roundabout way of saying like, we just will never know anything.
I love your passion, dog.
You know, like the John Cena thing, like,
yeah.
Did he have does he have a, what is it? A passport, or what's the thing where it's
biological passport?
Biological passport. And then if there's something off, are we doing a something off? Are we doing a carbon isotope test? Are we like doing all that? Like, you could just push the goalposts every fucking time on him. I
have a question for both of you guys, because this is something that I've thought about before, but within this fitness industry, there's like a few people who are the determiners and the gatekeepers of who's natural and who's not. There's you, there's Greg, there's maybe Philion, and then there's this other guy that wears glasses. I forgot his name. He's bald, he wears glasses. He has a pretty cool channel too. But when it does come to this whole thing within fitness, within other sports, you have like Giannis Antetokounmpo. You know who he is from the Milwaukee Bucks, who has an Achilles tendon that's double the size of a normal human, 13.5 inches. He can fucking run the length of the court in 5 strides. You have LeBron James, who people think and say is on TRT because he's a pro athlete. But you have some of these athletes in this realm who can do things that no matter what anybody does, even some guys who are 6'7" and 6'8" will not be able to jump like Giannis or jump like LeBron or like Jordan, right? You have other sports where people are insanely fast. You have other sports where there are physical anomalies in all these sports, and the muscle side of things isn't necessarily always the thing. It's not always seen, right? But when it does come to this side of fitness, the bodybuilding side of things, for some reason and you do see some differences, like Liver King, right? He had a GH gut. Mark mentioned he's like perpetually veiny. It's like his veins are always mad, even when it's cold. But for some reason in this industry, we think that there is a limit to the amount of muscle somebody can gain. Look at an IFBB pro bodybuilder, ain't nobody doing that shit naturally. But if you look at natural bodybuilding, where things are tested, and it's not as exciting, so it doesn't get as much, people don't look at it as much. There's fucking 20 different federations and it's unorganized. But when you look at top natural bodybuilders who are getting randomly tested in the off season, and they're also getting tested during shows, some of these guys look freaky. Some of these people look insane. And most people, like if Greg ever paid any attention to these guys, or if most people looked at them, they'd say, that person's on drugs. So why is it that there are anomalies within other sports, but when it comes to muscle, we don't think that there can be people who have a propensity for that?
I think that we do. I mean, I think like growing up, I knew a kid. His name was Ziggy. It'd be crazy if he actually saw this, but he moved to my school in 8th grade, and we started working out for football, and he bench pressed 315 right in front of me.
Wait, how old was he?
13. 13 years old. Yeah.
Okay.
He's like pure Armenian descent, you know, and he was fucking jacked at 13. That wasn't, I was like, I didn't even know that was human. Like, I maybe was doing 135 pounds, like maybe, probably not even at that point yet. Mm-hmm. And that dude was just jacked from like the jump. And if he like really, really just lifted all day, every day and like went really hard, like everyone would think he's on gear.
Of course.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think people care too much.
Of course. Yeah.
And when people want to sell things, it's like, well, hey, fuck you if you want to sell things.
People care too much. You made a whole video about it.
Well, no,
you obviously care about it.
Well, yeah, I care in the sense like my part doesn't really have much to do with being natty or not. Mm-hmm. It has to do with the speech that you use to sell things, and the speech that I try to stray from at every corner. Mm-hmm. Absolutisms, sacred knowledge, convoluted language that makes people confused more, and just absolutely no room between the in-group and the out-group. And once you've created that, then you sell.
Yes.
That's something that I try to stay away from. If you're not doing that and you're on steroids and you're not telling people, I honest to God, like, don't really have a fucking issue with that at all. What I think the reason why I was so attracted to this Liver King thing was because he was the charlatan first and foremost. Mm-hmm. And then like, hey, let's break this seal open so people can kind of see beyond that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, circling back to your question about like why is fitness so heavily focused on for like what was the overarching question? Like natty or not versus...
Yeah, because like in a bunch of other sports, there are freaks. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I mean, at the top levels of sports, you look at, I mean, everyone's going to say that everyone, the NFL's on drugs. But guys at the top level there, like, if they did come to fitness, they'd blow motherfuckers out of the water.
Like Aaron Donald.
Everyone, people think he's on a lot of drugs too. You know what I mean? But these are also athletes at the top level. And I think it's different because a pro bodybuilder isn't necessarily the top of genetic athleticism.
Yeah.
They're the top of genetic propensity for muscle gain. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that they can sprint a 4.2, 4.3, or 4.4. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I'd imagine that the athletes, like, for example, I'm going to use Russ Swole again. Sorry, Russ. But Russ was a former football player that got injured. He had goals of playing professional football. The only reason the guy chose to do powerlifting is because he got injured.
Phil Heath was a college basketball player.
He's a college basketball player. Oh. You know what I mean? So
I do
it's
think
different.
I think that, so I think that the athletes are always going to do the best. The best athletes are going to always do the best. And what happens is, though, like, what gets really weird is when the athletes start to mess around with drugs and they do too good. And that's when people are like, all right, there's something going on here.
Like what do you mean? Like,
so, who was that Yankees pitcher who, like, in his final years on the Yankees was pitching better than he ever has before at like 40 something? Was it, oh God.
I mean, he had
Roger Clemens.
Yes.
Yes. Oh. Roger Clemens.
Okay.
That was really suspect. You're talking straight up, this guy's an absolute monster of a pitcher. Uh-huh. At his old ass age, was starting to pitch some of the best baseball of his entire life.
Yeah.
That's when things get weird.
He's known as a power guy too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. And it's like, shit, like the drugs are working too well. Like, we got to scale it back at that level. That would be my speculation. And so you see guys like, holy shit, Barry Bonds, unbelievable athlete, unbelievable baseball player. Shit, he's getting way too good at this. Like way, way, way too good. You know, I mean, I think, and most people think, like, he's going to the Hall of Fame before the steroids. I think 100%.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to like continually speculate athletes that haven't been caught or been caught, but I think there's something to be said about like these incredible athletes in the late stages of their careers, dabbling with some peptides, dabbling with some GH, maybe low dose testosterone, and absolutely crushing,
An interesting thing is sometimes some people will take it just to catch up to the genetic anomaly. So that's interesting.
Right. That's when it's like,
because Barry Bonds is like multiple generation baseball player.
Oh,
like
yeah.
He's, and he was unbelievable. And it appears that he took stuff probably later in his career. It looked like he was already on his way to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
But imagine me or anybody else just trying to take something just to try to catch up to some of that.
And that's, I think, the biggest issue that people have is like, you're actually not naturally as good as the other guy.
I wonder what makes us admire that. Like, why would you admire somebody? It would be like admiring just like, oh, I was born in New York. I have zero control over being born in New York.
Yeah, yeah.
I think a lot of people just assume that if somebody does look amazing or is performing in some way that they probably did something to get there, and they don't want to believe that it could just be a genetic superiority to themselves. So like the people who end up abusing the shit the worst are the people who are trying to catch up and compensate in general. Like I've seen some people that are competing at like local, just like their first show, and they're using as much shit as a guy who's like a top pro, if not more sometimes, to try and, because they just think, oh, I don't have the secret, and they must just be doing more than me. And in reality, they're just weren't meant to do that activity. Yeah.
And, the interesting thing about bodybuilding and this fitness space is that when it comes to trying to aspire to be like someone in this space or someone that you idealize in this space, for most people, well, not for most people, but like to try to become a really good basketball player, you got to get on the court and fucking train that. You can't take testosterone and fucking growth hormone and shit to get there. But this specific thing, right? If someone wants to try to catch up to that genetic elite, well, I can train a lot and maybe I can use a bunch of shit to do that. There's no other sport that really has that. You can take as much shit as you want, but you'll never be a Barry Bonds. You'll never be a fucking Aaron Donald. You got to be an athlete for that. But for this, you can have that. You could potentially in your mind have that look if you hop on a bunch of shit. And that's what's so weird about this.
Well, look, if you think about basketball as if we were just to collect every basketball move that a player makes in a day, that has a recovery toll. So somebody who's not as genetically gifted, if they're able to have more basketball moves per day, they can give themselves a leg up. And that would be where something like literally any androgen could help them with that. And so, instead of thinking about it in like, I'm going to beat the guy that is better than me, I'm going to be able to outwork him because I'm literally not going to feel the fatigue that I would normally feel. I think that is where you could see the stark difference across all sports, actually. You can just do more. Just do more and not have the recovery costs of doing more. And that's where you can catch up. But I don't think...
you think you could catch up, though.
Yeah, you think you could, but it's worth it. For them, it's worth a shot, right? It's like, why not? This is my life. This is what I want to do. And the answer to why not is like, it's against the rules, first and foremost. But that doesn't really matter if you can't get caught to a lot of people.
Derek, have you noticed differences or disadvantages, rather, of people using performance-enhancing drugs? Like someone's body getting very tight. Like we've saw some pictures and some stuff of Liver King, and when you see him try to do something more athletic, he looks a lot like me. Like he's got the mobility of a trash can, I would say.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that to be a trait of a lot of guys that take stuff. However, a lot of guys that take stuff start to become well-muscled, but our boy Nsima here is well-muscled, and he's very fluid, and his body has a different look than some of the people that we see. Like, yeah, here you can just tell how tight the hips are and how tight that shoulder must be just to try to throw that. So have you observed potential disadvantages? Are you aware of anything that any steroid could do to muscles that would
hinder
perhaps hinder some stuff in any way?
I think in general, a lot of people who are using this stuff are doing it not for actual real performance reasons. It's more vanity driven, the image they're trying to portray, some cosmetic perception of, you know, what is the representation of like peak masculinity and what they think to be, you know, the ideal physique to, you know, either attract women or feel superior to other men or whatever it is. And in general, oftentimes people will neglect, you know, like functional training or flexibility or mobility or whatever, striving for that because it's not they don't deem it to be a good use of time. So I don't know, like even me, when I used to teach swimming lessons, I used to be a lifeguard when I was younger.
Oh, shit.
When I was like at peak size, I would be trying to teach back crawl and my fucking delt would like smack me in the face. So I couldn't even teach the
He's like
movements.
drowning and trying to teach at the same time.
And I'm sure you can attest to when you're like super muscled, you don't float very well. So
Careful with your next words, homie. I know where you're going with this. Why can't I float well, Derek? Is it because I'm muscled?
oh no,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's nothing to do with
So for-
anything else. Calm down.
Bone density.
So I
got
think
a lot of
though,
density,
if you,
too.
If you think about like, look, if your training is geared towards gaining muscle, then you're going to be too muscled. But if your training is geared towards your specific sport, you're going to be geared towards your specific sport. So you take testosterone and you get on your bike, you're going to be better at biking, but you're not necessarily going to be too muscled. So I guess,
Yeah,
Derek,
I don't think taking gear will inherently like wipe out your mobility necessarily,
But it could negatively impact. I mean, just if you took stuff and maybe just kind of didn't know what you're doing. We saw it with Vitor Belfort when he was young. He came in the UFC and he absolutely just dominated.
Yep.
He's high-level jiu-jitsu, but he just punched the shit out of everybody because he was so strong and just he came in and just smashed everybody. But he overjuiced himself to the point where he got himself too big and too jacked and he was kind of puffy and he actually didn't perform very well.
Yeah, like overshooting what would otherwise be conducive to your sport could otherwise be super counterproductive.
it's
not
like dose dependent as well.
well, it's just like whatever you get out of the drugs that you're using. So like hypothetically, if you were a terrible responder and you only gain 1 pound out of whatever it is you're using, you know, how much is that going to impede whatever it is that you're trying to do? It depends on the sport, depends what you're trying to do out of it. But it like if you become a 260 pound shredded bodybuilder, like obviously there's no getting around the fact that it's gonna make it more difficult to do basic shit. Even like walk upstairs, you're gonna look like an idiot oftentimes.
Yeah, and something like you know, if you're playing something like tennis and you're taking like testosterone and Anadrol or something, that would could be something that would bloat your body up so much that it might be a negative.
Yeah. So I think in general, it's more like a consequence of whatever it is that you're getting out of the drugs, more so than the drugs aren't going to all of a sudden make it so you can't, you know, touch your back anymore. You know, can't wash your back in the shower anymore. It's going to be a consequence of how much physical mass there is preventing you from getting there, as well as you're neglecting the activities that would otherwise be conducive to, you know, maintaining peak flexibility or mobility or whatever it is.
Derek, you downsized, yeah? How much did you used to weigh? Like how much more than now?
Peak was like 255 maybe, but it was not like
Bring up the pictures.
it was not that lean. So
Now, I'm actually curious about this. First off, why did you choose to downsize? I don't know if it's got busier or whatever, but mentally, did you feel any type of struggle with, I used to look like this, and now you don't look bad by any means. That's not what I'm saying. But what I noticed is like, for
Thanks,
example, Pete Rubish, right? Who we got to get on here. Pete, you know Pete Rubish?
Yeah.
Yeah.
like he came full off.
Yeah. And you see like Pete used,
Pete.
and Pete looks good now, but Pete used to look like fucking Superman. And I am curious, what is it like mentally to have seen yourself at this point and now you're not there? Are you just fine with that, or does it hit you at all?
Well, it's definitely a perception in the fitness industry that it becomes very difficult if you tie your, I don't know, brand around it too significantly. And then you end up, I don't know, like for guys, for me, I didn't really think it was that. It kind of just happened naturally too. Not actually naturally. But like, as I started focusing on like entrepreneurial endeavors and just dip my I don't know, interest shifted, that alignment of interest very much just naturally took away from my ability to, you know, focus as much and, you know, allocate, you know, mental resources to training. You know, like 6 days a week, I dropped down to like 3 to 4 just to maintain. I'm doing like the minimum volume to get in and out. Maybe that's not the most conducive to, you know, sustaining size. And then also the drugs, like what's the point of taking all these drugs when I'm not even training to make use of them properly? I'm just stressing my body out for no reason.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like for me, I had kind of come to terms with, I was never going to like compete on a stage. For me, I don't have the genetics to like push it and build like a crazy physique that I felt was even sustainable, because it was the amount of eating and the training and stuff was very much eating into the productivity that I otherwise deemed to be more valuable. So, you know, like for me, it just kind of, I don't know, my interests, you know, shifted as I got older. When you're younger, you think a lot of things are super important that might not be as important to you years later.
Yeah.
Switching gears, how did you end up running multiple businesses? Because you just mentioned something that I'm fascinated with, which is people's interest level. Because I often will hear people talk about the grind and how hard things are. And I'm always like, well, you either did it or you didn't do it. And if you did it, that shows me that that's where your interest level is. And I hear Joe Rogan talk about it often, about, you know, following your interest, and how he just kept following his own interest. He follows his curiosity. It seems like you have had a similar path. How did you get into you got a fragrance now? Like that's uncommon for someone to have their own cologne, and you're also involved in a TRT clinic as well, right?
Yeah. So for me, it was very much as I progressed online, there was a lot of stuff that I used that I was recommending to people because it was stuff I felt useful enough to spend my money on, was either benefiting my life in some capacity or had some utility, or was something I'd been using for years already, like before, you know, I had ever even made a piece of content. And that kind of stuff, it's the most natural segue into how are you going to monetize, well, the stuff that I believe in and use already, and if I can somehow improve on that, or I don't know, offer something that I feel there's a hole in the market for, you know, by all means, lean into that. So for me, any vertical I've gone down has very much been aligned with stuff that is highly interesting to me, and I otherwise, I don't know, resonate with and know can be scalable because I'm actually interested in it and continuously further educate myself on, or am passionate enough about it that I feel it's imparting value on the audience when they use it themselves.
Have you gotten yourself into any businesses where you weren't that interested, or have you thought about a bunch of different ideas and then you're like, I don't think that's good because I probably just won't give a fuck about that in 3 or 4 years?
I guess like fortunately, most the stuff I do has been pretty aligned with exactly. That's why I try to be a bit more dialed on the amount of stuff I start. Like I don't want to start something and half-ass the shit out of it. So I have only a couple things, and I try to pour most of my mental resources into that. So for me, dietary supplements has been, you know, I'm continuously further educating myself and trying to, like, mainly on the cognitive enhancement space. We started with the nootropic formula before we ever got into the workout stuff with the pre-workouts and the protein and whatnot. All stuff I used and bought anyways, but I was very, very interested in the nootropic side of things, cognitive enhancement, increasing memory formation, information retention, mental clarity, sharpness, etc. So like that's where that kind of scaled out. And then on the preventative medicine side of things, that is where Marek Health kind of was like very aligned with what I was doing. It's you know, I'd seen so many bodybuilders fuck themselves up, or even me wishing I knew more about this stuff going into it and had high quality medical oversight, wasn't getting shunned by doctors or judged. Because that's, you know, a big thing people deal with in this industry too, is judgmental doctors who will shun you for just wanting to be proactive about your health to avoid having a heart attack or whatever. And just my frustrations too with my own family trying to get help. And even if my mom's like 60 years old, trying to get like a basic assessment or like, I don't know, just see where her cardiovascular health is, even though she hasn't had a heart attack yet, you know, I would very much like to see, you know, is there anything that is building up insidiously on the back end that we could get in front of, and she needs to change her diet or her lifestyle or something accordingly. But, you know, if you don't literally have a heart attack happening right in front of their face, oftentimes they won't let you. Yeah. So I've become very passionate about the preventative medicine side of things and being proactive about avoiding getting to that disease state and optimizing your quality of life, health, vitality, etc.
Does that seem to be getting a little bit better here in the United States, do you feel? And in Canada?
Fortunately, you can pay for a lot of stuff out of pocket here, which I do like. They don't, you know, like in Canada, oftentimes, even when you try to pay for something, they'll tell you no, which is wild. because it's like,
Wow.
yeah. So I guess it's such a burden to the system in some places that not only is it not going to be covered by the free healthcare, but even if you want to pay for it yourself, they'll be like, no, you can't. Sorry,
Wow.
you don't need it because I know better than you.
I think
Get out of my office.
it needs to be stated that Marek is not just a fucking steroid
I was about
farm.
to say that. It's
Like,
not
yeah,
a
like even
TRT
when
clinic.
No.
yeah, when we call it a TRT clinic, like I almost cringe a little bit because I
Yeah.
know what people's
Yeah.
perception of TRT clinics are.
I'll tell
And-
you from my experience, like I have thyroid issues,
Yeah.
and I don't know if that is genetic. Like it runs in a. Does it run? Off
Could.
The top of your
Could
head?
be
Yeah.
autoimmune.
So like yeah, I have autoimmune issues in my family, and like I did bloods like a long time ago, and the doctor, the general doctor was like, well, you know, this looks a little concerning, but we can do something about it or not. And you know, as I'm getting older, like I don't know, I want to do something, just get more in touch with what's going on. My sleep sucks. A lot of things I'm having issues with. So I did the Marek blood test, and it was like a seriously full scale. I know that you guys have them as a sponsor. I don't know.
Yeah,
if
I've got
you-
my blood work done
yeah,
multiple times.
14 vials, basically determining like full scale, like thyroid, even like DHT, and like so many things that would never be considered. Also, on top of that, the onboarding process, basically with, I had a woman who I talked to, she like explained to me like how much more in depth this is than like any blood test you've ever had before. And then Derek also said it's like over half of your clients don't even.
Yeah, we have a big chunk of our patients that aren't on TRT. Like oftentimes people just assume like you go in, you're going to be put on TRT. It's not the case whatsoever.
Yeah, like the doctors are going to be like, they're not gonna avoid it if they can, right? Or
yeah, like you would be evaluating natural interventions first that are
Gonna
if it's warranted to go down the, like you might just have, you know, perpetually high cortisol levels from having fucked up sleep or whatever it is, and it's on the back end screwing up your, you know, gonadotropin output, which leads to low tests. But you think because you have a 300 test, like, oh, I need TRT and I feel like shit. It's like, well, what about all the other stuff in your life?
so like think about what we've heard, like horror stories from doctors, basically being like, you walk in and they just want to sling some pill at you because they can get a decent paycheck from whatever company they're working with.
Circling back quick, sorry
Yeah.
to interrupt, but I just don't want to forget. Like one of the motivations too was doctors, they can only learn so much in multiple areas.
Yeah.
So going down like the hyper niche of hormone replacement or I don't know, like comprehensive thyroid analysis, it's not necessarily something that your family doctor will be well versed enough in. So when I was speaking about my frustration with doctors, it's like there are a lot of amazing doctors that do great things, but you can't expect them to know full scale everything. So for us, it's more so finding doctors that align with our niche of what we focus on, and we've vetted them that they stay up to date on the current literature and don't just rely on their, you know, their MD from fucking 20 years ago or whatever. And they're very, very passionate about continuing to educate themselves on the specific area too. So like we don't touch a lot of stuff that a family doctor would, obviously, but the stuff that we are passionate about, and we make sure we have that in-depth knowledge, like that's our bread and butter. And that's why we exist, and why I'm so passionate about it is because some of that stuff, like I very much have experience. Like even my first girlfriend ever, she had Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And I remember going to multiple doctors with her, and they kept telling her she was fine, even though she was like cold all the time, hair was falling out, had like all these brutal issues that were, I was like, on the surface, this looks like you're hypothyroid. And I just couldn't wrap my head around what was going on, because I would see her TSH levels. And in Canada, if your TSH levels fall within a certain range, they don't look at anything else. Okay, you need to have a fucked up TSH and then a fucked up T4 to even look at your T3, and then they won't even look at your thyroid globulin antibodies, your TPO, thyroid peroxidase, I think it's TPO antibodies. They won't look at some of these more in-depth markers because it just they don't even go that far as to either warrant it from the free healthcare perspective, or they otherwise don't think it's warranted because the preliminary markers aren't representative of what is like so blatantly fucked up to even justify the other things. I forget which marker it was that was sky high, but I think her TPO antibodies were like through the roof once we actually got the full scale testing done. But she had gone like a year of getting told she was fine because her TSH levels on paper looked okay. And like that was frustrating because I saw her suffering for a year straight with an autoimmune issue that she didn't know it was like inside her body. It was like her immune system was attacking her thyroid gland essentially the entire time. And I was like, damn, you know, like that would have been ideal if we had somebody who listened and really pushed for that more elaborate testing. And I don't know if that's a, you know, a detriment of the free healthcare where it's, you know, they try to be as limited as possible of where they allocate the available budget. And for a young woman who otherwise seems like they should be healthy, you know, maybe we're not going to test anything.
But even if she wanted to pay, they wouldn't let her pay.
Yeah,
right?
but we also didn't even know about that stuff to look further.
Yeah.
Because it's like, why would you even be looking for antibodies when you have a normal TSH? Like that kind of thing is not well known.
Go ahead.
No, it's just like some of the autoimmune stuff is like new, I don't know, new generation education, I guess. And it's not very well understood why it's happening, what's going on, why is your body attacking itself?
Yeah.
Like it's not common. So
Got to go on a carnivore diet.
yeah, maybe. I don't know. I guess it depends. But anyway, like if Marek Health existed back then, I could have, you know, got her like a full-scale thyroid panel and seen like a major red flag immediately. Or you could otherwise see the representation of slowly deteriorating biomarkers that aren't reflective of somebody who has the same thyroid health month to month. And you can see it like slowly like petering away in function. And if you had like somebody who was actually really, really focused on digging into that, they might have been able to flesh out and interpret the blood work and say like, oh, you know, maybe this is why your body temperature is like chronically low.
And have you guys adjusted the actual reference ranges? Because like when you go to a hospital, reference ranges are at a certain level for where most of the population is. Do you guys have adjusted reference ranges for like testosterone and other things where it should be ideally?
Yeah, so we go by the reference ranges of the LabCorp or the Quest, but we will often have our own unique interpretation of what we deem to be reflective of, in general, what we'd like to see in an optimized state for that specific individual, and then kind of use that context to relate targeted recommendations. But it's still somewhat vague until you actually get to talk to a provider and get like a more informed assessment. It's kind of just creating a picture that you can then kind of extrapolate out certain informed, educated assessments about things, but to actually dial in on a specific recommendation, you need that, I don't know, like targeted oversight that kind of understands exactly what's going on at all levels. Because you could have a low test or even a normal test, but your free test is low because your SHBG is high, because your liver's stressed out, because you're doing this and that. Like there's like a bunch of different stuff that goes into it.
I love it. I think it's great. And something I've shared for quite some time is I think people should treat themselves like athletes, you know, treat yourself like a professional athlete. So there might be a cost associated with getting some of these tests done, but it makes you feel incredible because you have a whole team of people that are like combing through your blood work and they're saying, hey, you might need these vitamins and you might need more sleep, or, you know, what's your day like? It looks like you're maybe a little more stressed than you might think. And there's a lot of stuff that you can just go through. Exercise, diet. We know how powerful all of these things are. And maybe just with some intervention from people that know what they're doing and that know how to read your blood work and check the hormones. I mean, again, there might be a cost associated with it, but like, what if it changes your life?
Yeah.
What if you drop 20 pounds and feel better and now you feel like you're 25 when you're 45?
Yeah. And even assessing like why, even from the TRT side of things, why, if you actually need it, finding out why you need it. Like, is it that you have inadequate signaling from your brain to your testes, or is it your testes are literally like functionally damaged and are unresponsive? Because there's a difference between, are you a candidate because no matter how much your brain is signaling to them, they're just not going to respond. And at that point, you could probably never recover, where even if you're trying to optimize the natural things, if you have like primary hypogonadism and your testicles are just like suboptimally functioning or lack thereof entirely, you know, there's some of that stuff, it will very, very much impact what a actual informed assessed, you know, recommendation might be. Because maybe you might not need TRT, maybe you just need to dial in certain things, or even kick things back in with certain drugs that might otherwise not be lifelong reliance on exogenous testosterone. Like, it would be very worthwhile to understand like why it's low, what factors could have led to it, and if it's something you can fix naturally through lifestyle changes, dietary manipulation, sleep hygiene improvements, etc., versus just haphazardly jumping on shit.
Yeah. You know, Zach and I were talking about something the other day, and actually, I listened to I think you two, I don't know if you were talking with him or you were talking with Chris, but you were talking about how, like, when it comes to the hypertrophy aspect of things or looking bigger, you know, when you get leaner, people are like, do you even lift? And you almost feel a pressure, right, to try to look a certain way. We had Nathan French on the podcast recently, and Nathan mentioned that he's on TRT. He is quite young, and he did mention that, like, there did seem to be he performs at a high level. Before he had ever gone on anything, before he got on TRT, he was doing triathlons, he was doing marathon running, he did a bodybuilding show. This was pre-TRT.
Like a 7-minute mile or something in a marathon, like just ridiculous.
Yeah, he was working himself down, right? So he ended up getting on TRT, but he did say that there did feel that there was a bit of a pressure, right?
Yeah, there's extreme amount.
There's an extreme amount of pressure because not only is he doing this because he enjoys it, but there's also the side of social media. And we've been kind of thinking about this where the looks side of things, right? Like, for example, the Kardashians, lip filler, they probably got some, some shit in their ass, right? But then you start seeing a lot of women trying to become Kardashian clothes where they get lip filler and they get BBLs because instead of not everyone has genetics for ass, right? So if you can get a BBL and get that ass right now, but also get that tummy tuck because they take fat from here and they put it over here, the best of both worlds. I don't even have to go to the gym. I don't have to do the work. Now, I'm not saying...
That surgery was hard for me to recover from, but I thank you for recommending it to me. Appreciate it.
It was worth it.
But the interesting thing is that it does seem to be like we see that affecting women. We see that affecting their body image and the way they feel about themselves, where they think, if I can just plump my lips up and change this, I'll be good. And now, I mean, you kind of do see it like it's always been on the male side of things. You want to be big and muscular, right? Mm-hmm. But it does seem that with the prevalence of younger guys getting on TRT, when they don't need it for any type of testosterone replacement, they're just trying to get big and jacked. It seems like TRT is the new BBL for guys.
So
and it's not technically replacement oftentimes.
It's not replacement.
Yeah.
I want to
stacking on top.
I want to talk about like my journey through like actually the how you look thing. When I started, no one gave a shit about how they looked or anything. It was like that was the cool thing about CrossFit was like, what's your time? Like, can you do this thing? Mm-hmm. What you look like doesn't matter. It's can you
look like a firefighter is what I told you.
I'm working on it.
It's the hat. The hat's got the red in it, and I thought like a fire marshal was coming.
I'm working on it. So, and then it went into weightlifting. Again, what do you do? It has nothing to do with what you look like. Like nobody cares about what anyone looks like in the sport. It's what's your total matters. That's
your performance.
Your performance matters. And then when I started to post things online, immediately comments came in like, wow, this is amazing for such a skinny long guy to be doing. And I found that kind of endearing. It was fun. It was like my thing. It was like, that's my difficulty that I have to deal with. Maybe it's like me being a taller, lankier athlete trying to do a sport that's notoriously for shorter people, people who've always been strong in the gym. And I leaned into that and I loved it, but as I moved away from weightlifting, then my identity now is like, okay, well, I want to just like do general fitness stuff. Okay, well, now like what I look like kind of matters. And that sucks because now I'm paying much more attention to it. I've been putting on a lot of weight lately to try and fit this role of a weightlifter. And in doing so, I've put on
a movie.
In a movie.
Right.
Yes,
okay.
In a movie. And I'm really excited about that. But in doing so, I've put on a lot of fat. And it's like, it's not really comfortable to be at this body weight right now. Mainly because like,
this is the game, bro.
Yeah, I know. And so what do I do? If like I said, if I go and try and lean out, like people are, I think the common thing is like, if you do cardio, you're not going to lose your gains. And that's absolutely true. Like if I started to lose body fat, like I wouldn't lose that much strength, if any at all, if I just maintained a lot of other things and trained well. But I think that losing that body fat, people would then begin to say, oh, do you even lift again? It's like almost like the fat like allows me to have this perception of looking bigger, and if I slim down again to try and be sub 10% body fat, like, it's a catch-22. And I realize that. And what I'm excited for, hopefully, is when I finish, this bulk, if you want to call it that, and just do what I want to do and look how it ends up looking, and just live that way. I cannot wait to be in that space, and I'm just going to continually have to ignore the people talking about how I look. And it sounds like I'm a whiny little pissant for being like, guys, stop talking about how I look, because I'm the one putting myself out there online.
Yeah.
Like, this is the game. We cannot change the masses for being like, okay, here's someone on screen. This is what they look like. Comment. You look like this, right? That's never, I repeat, never, ever, ever going to change. For women, for men, if you put yourself online,
yes,
the first thing anyone is going to say is, how do you look? It sucks, but that's the world we live in.
Yeah.
Right? The keyboard adds that, that ability for people to just be like, oh, I've got no filter anymore. You look like this. You look like that. So when that can no longer have an effect, I'm excited to be in that place. Like, someone who's a great example of this is James Smith. Do you know James Smith?
Which one?
He's a British guy. He lives in Australia.
Okay, yeah,
Australia now.
Okay.
I'm good friends with James Smith. He was on steroids for a little bit. Wanted to get jacked, be a personal trainer who was jacked. And now he's off steroids. He's been off steroids for a long time. I think he did like a few cycles. And he, you could say like he doesn't look like he lifts, but he's an athletic looking dude. He looks fine, whatever. He likes doing jujitsu and he talks about fitness. And I find that to be very endearing.
Yeah.
If someone is going to come along, some juice monkey bodybuilder, and he's like, this guy is giving people fitness advice and he doesn't look like he lifts. Like, well, that's bullshit. And like, I'm hoping that I'll be able to parse through those things as they come at me in the future.
I like James, but the funny thing about him is that James is the opposite of the juice monkey bodybuilder in that he will say that most of these guys are on juice. Like, he's that guy who's like, I used to take juice and most of these guys are on juice. And look at, like, he's kind of playing the opposite game of it. And I kind of see that. And James has amazing information. Don't get me wrong, but he's playing the opposite where he's like, all these people are on juice because I used to be on it, and look at me now. Like, that's a theme I've noticed within his content. Not taken away from the quality of his content, which is high quality, high knowledge, and when put into practice will work. Okay, but it's kind of odd. I will say that.
I will say this: I've never had this level of body dysmorphia in my life.
How do we get?
Wait, why?
That I currently have.
Why? Oh, because of the way you're having to look for the movie role.
You could tell, right? Like when we were working out, I kept talking. It's just like it's on my mind a lot, and it never was before. And it was kind of like my superpower.
You ever see how fat I got?
No, yeah, I mean,
you got to lean into it, man.
I know, and I think at some point, like I'm not too worried about it. Like I know I can sense it. I'm excited to move past it, and I know I will be able to.
You're a crazy person right now. You look great. You look like an athlete.
You dwarf everyone. So.
Yeah.
As your audience said, you mogged us the last time you came on the podcast.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Are you going to change your training habits by any chance, like on your way coming down? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but like Olympic lifting might not be the best for like developing muscle.
No, like I was actually talking to Mark about this before. Like when I hit and Nsima, when I hit that deadlift, like something changed where I was like, I don't really want to do this.
You did
anymore.
a 661 deadlift recently, right?
Yes, or 660. Yeah,
660. There you go.
And I just like I really don't want to do this anymore. Like I don't have it in me. Maybe I will in the future, but knowing how hard I trained for that deadlift, like to train harder than that and to be older and to try to do that naturally, why on earth would I want to do that to myself? Like it's nowhere near as fun as like waking up, like going to do some like light cardio, coming back, getting a nice pump and like sitting down and doing work for the day. That sounds so great for me.
Yeah.
You know, like going to the gym and being like, oh, I'm going to fucking kill myself with deadlifts today. Like,
yeah.
So you mentioned having some like body dysmorphia. How do you guys think, you know, there's a lot of people right now that have a lot of anxiety. We see a lot of depression. Maybe it's also just getting talked about more. Maybe it's kind of been around for a long time and we just haven't, maybe a lot of men have like just stuffed it down and just didn't talk about their feelings. But what do you guys think is maybe some things that are responsible to leading to some of this, and what are some ways out of it? Because I do think like hormone optimization, getting your blood work done, just really being concerned with your health, never mind taking testosterone or anything like that, but just taking control of your health, I think can be something that's really valuable, going on walks, running, getting some sunlight and so forth.
Yeah, I don't think I have like an expert opinion on like how to manage the mental side of this industry, because it's pretty fucked up, dude. Like when you're looking at TikToks and Instagram, and it's just like the hyper extreme outliers of people that clearly are picking up the most traction, getting success. Like it's hard to not get mind warped by it.
Yeah,
and especially,
do you feel that personally sometimes, like the stress and the?
Well, fortunately for me, I don't feel like a pressure to maintain something as much as I might have if I was somebody who didn't sit in front of a camera and do like informative style content. But yeah, like even like when I started shit, it like came from a place of insecurity when I was younger too. Like it's not like I was trying to become a Mr. Olympia competitor or something. And I think a lot of people, that's ultimately what drives them to do it, as much as they wouldn't want to say they're, doing it because they're competing or whatever. Like I think even a lot of the competitors would probably still be pushing it even if they weren't, stepping on stage, because they just enjoy the process of continuing to improve upon themselves or, look larger in life or whatever it is. Like it's very much all derives down to this, body dysmorphia that I think is hyper accelerated and at scale more than ever. And it's really hard to get out of it. Like I don't really have good advice on that other than, I don't know, just be like mindful of what you're consuming, and that what you see is not representative of what like the layman necessarily thinks is good. Like if you have visible abs or you're in like reasonable shape, like you're probably like a top 1% person as is. Like, but then you see some guy you follow on social media and it's hard to not get mind warped into thinking this is the pinnacle and this is what I need to get to be good. And oftentimes people will take that and then it blurs the line so much on what is good that then they see somebody else who's objectively not like super impressive and they're like, oh, you even lift or whatever.
Yeah. And I think, it's a totally valid question. Like, how do we defeat this thing? And what we haven't brought up yet is just straight up focusing on just the mind. We talk about the fact that so many things that we can practice are therapeutic, but nothing is more therapeutic than therapy or like mindfulness, or having some sort of sense of value. Like men specifically, like vasopressin is our drug. It's like we want to feel like we are valued. And if you can give a man some sort of purpose, some sort of value, they won't feel the pressures of somebody saying they don't look like they lift. And when that scale tips towards, I feel what society is saying about me or whatever, that's when the negative part of it happens. And I think the more that a male can kind of, and I'm only saying this because I am a male, can kind of mitigate that with practices outside of the gym.
What do you do?
Well,
what is your suggestion?
He cries about it.
No, I have.
And that's all the time we got for the day.
No. What do I do? I make sure to have, my drug of choice, which is talking to other people who want to have deep discussion. I'm not sure if I brought it up in the last podcast that I was here, but I went on this bachelor party and it was actually really awesome. All of us like sat around in a circle. It was like 20 guys.
Yeah.
And you could drink if you wanted to. I didn't even drink the whole weekend on this bachelor party, which was pretty awesome. And we sat around in a circle and they're like, okay, we want you to go around and say, what's one thing that's ascending in the world? Like what's something that's going up, trending, whatever.
This is at a bachelor party?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. These are the people that I try to hang around
nice,
with. Yeah. And then another thing was, what was a coming of age thing for you? And my story of the coming of age thing was when I have 3 older sisters and I didn't really fit in with them. My older sisters would be doing whatever, and my mom would be doing whatever, and I would go in and talk with my dad, even when I was like 11 years old, but we would talk like man to man.
Yeah.
And we would talk about very deep things, like anything, philosophy, religion, politics, whatever. I realized very early on in my life that is what I need to function. Like I absolutely need that, and that's something that I lean into.
And then you partied after this?
Oh, what, the bachelor party thing?
Yeah, I'm just trying to imagine I'm showing up to a
No, it's
bachelor
like-
party and I sit in a
No,
circle
like
and it's
we-
like, tell me your darkest secrets. I'd be like, fuck.
He told me
No,
about it.
it
It's like
was-
him and Chris, and they're just
Yeah,
like
with me, Chris, and like a
in
bunch
these
of
deep
dudes
conversations.
having deep conversations, and then
Okay.
we after
is
it,
sick.
after it, you could like once it was cool. It was like for this guy, you know, like this is what he wanted. Like this is all he wanted. He wanted his best friends to talk openly and honestly with each other, and like for a group of grown men to do something like that is pretty fucking amazing. And then after that, drink, have fun, do whatever you want. But what ended up happening was everyone split off into smaller groups and just kept talking until, you know, it was time to go to sleep. And then we all went to sleep and woke up, and there was more events for us to do for the rest of the weekend. And that's kind of beside the point. I just think like that's what I do to answer your question. You know, I've tried like actual therapy. And
What do you mean by
personally-
tried? Did you feel like it didn't work?
I think that it's very therapeutic for people to just be heard and to have deeper discussions. There are a lot of people who don't have that. So if a therapist can provide that for you to just make you think deeper and talk deeper, then that can actually really change who you are and your perspective on life.
Yeah.
I'm lucky that I get that every day. I'm literally with a guy whose podcast is called Modern Wisdom. It's all about being wiser and smarter and talking better. So I get to talk to that guy all the time. I don't need that. What I want is like some serious hand holding. What's got you fucked up? And let's bust through that thing, whatever that is. And like, I didn't get that with, you know, my first couple experiences with therapists. So that's something that I'm interested in and I'm knowingly wanting to go after.
Yeah.
And I think like, you know, a lot of people say like the gym is my therapy and movement is my therapy. Well, that's true, but therapy could also be your therapy, you know?
You know, you're totally right about that on the mental side of things. But I do think that on the physical side of things, the odd thing about when we think specifically about bodybuilding is judging your physique on the way it looks.
Yeah.
The reason why I haven't competed since 2015 is because I kind of found jujitsu. I was a soccer player since I was 6. So when I played in college and I got injured, I needed another physical outlet. That's when I got into bodybuilding and powerlifting. But bodybuilding was fucking annoying because you're always in, like, you go on stage and then this person says, bring up your triceps, bring up your shoulders. And then you're now hyper focused every single day of, I need to make my shoulders bigger. I need to make this bigger. Oh, I need to fucking mess with this symmetry and this shit. And that is not good. That isn't actually healthy, even though, because within fitness, people look at certain individuals and their physique is somewhat a physical representation of their health, even though we know that people can be on a shit ton of gear and their blood work could be shit and they're not actually healthy. But that's what the immediately thing, that's what's seen. But I think if, like you did, you have weightlifting and you have jujitsu. These are two performance-based physical practices where it's like, yeah, you do pay attention to the way you look, but it's more so about the way you perform. And that's why, like, when I found jujitsu, it was so fucking good. Like, it's not that I don't care about the way I look, but my physical practices, my training is not focused on the way I look. It's focused on what I can do, and that's been so helpful for me. So I don't plan on competing in bodybuilding anymore because it's just too hyper focused on your physique, and then you get hyper focused on your physique. You know what I mean?
What if you really like it though?
Well, I mean, if you like it, I can't tell people what's problematic for them. Like Alberto Nunez, Jeff Alberts, these guys from 3DMJ, Eric, like Sam Okunola, and Sam doesn't compete anymore in bodybuilding, but these are some natural bodybuilders and they look great, but they've been able to do it for decades in a healthy way. Jeff is almost 50 years old and he has kids. He looks great. He's managed to do it in a healthy way, but he's not hyper focused on it. It doesn't seem that he has body dysmorphia. But I do know bikini competitors and bodybuilding competitors who's just like, they're just incessantly trying to change certain things and they're incessantly focused on the physique. And this is Jeff right here. He's I think he's 50. This guy, I fucking love this man. But if you can find something that can allow you to perform and get you not so focused on your physique all the time, that could be a physical practice that could help this body dysmorphia idea.
I think both of those things, jiu-jitsu and weightlifting, in a way, like they just give you a mirror and they try to almost like break down your ego. And I know jiu-jitsu for sure. Have you guys heard the saying? It's like you spend your 20s worrying what everyone thinks about you. You spend your 30s not worrying what anyone thinks about you. And then you spend your 40s realizing no one thought anything about you at all.
I never heard that, but that's dope.
So in essence, and there's a famous book, Crime and Punishment.
Too long.
Super famous. Yeah. Well, the main character, Raskolnikov, is constantly worrying what everyone thinks about him. And he's constantly putting himself down. He's like, I'm just a slimy piece of shit. And what I loved about that book was that was realizing that outlook is the most selfish, self-driven outlook that you could possibly have. Making fun of yourself and how you're perceived and worrying about that is as selfish as it gets, even though you're putting yourself down. You think by putting yourself down, you're making yourself lower. But by constantly focusing on yourself, you have a much higher ego than you would ever perceive. And I think if there's any way that we can kind of reverse that and maybe give someone confidence and that they don't have to put themselves down or look at what other people think, then it's fine. I think like you can be a bodybuilder and be confident and not have body dysmorphia and just love it and feel good. Like at least that's what Arnold put out there into the world. At least that's how he portrayed himself. But you never know with anyone. But yeah, I think it's something worth thinking about is destroying someone's ego in a way and trying to build up some level of confidence.
Power Project family, hope you're having a good day. Now, we've partnered with 8 Sleep mattresses because it's made a big difference for our recovery and everything that we do. Me personally, I sleep really hot, so I used to wake up in a puddle of sweat. But now, since the mattress changes its temperature through the night, I sleep like a baby. Andrew, how can they learn more?
Yes, you guys got to head over to 8sleep.com/powerproject. And when you guys go there, you'll automatically receive $150 off of your order. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Still on 2 hours sleep?
Dog, that was that was a joke, right?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Fuck you. All right. So that 2 hours of sleep thing, we legit did a bit. We laughed after it. It was a joke, but people really actually thought I slept 2 hours. 2 hours.
What did you say? It was like a gram of caffeine a day.
Yeah,
like
I said
2 hours sleep.
Yeah, I said I'd do a gram of caffeine. I think I said I'd eat like 400 grams of protein and get 2 hours of sleep. It was just like the most ridiculous shit that people would take as a joke.
too.
But
Now might be a good time to mention the app that you have. If you take a picture of somebody, it will tell you whether they're natty or not, right? You want to take a picture of Nsima and test it out?
The phone just
kidding.
explodes.
why'd you bring that shit up? God damn.
I've seen it come up, and people do believe that you were serious.
Dog, we talk we've been talking so much about sleep on this podcast for years about how to get optimal sleep, how many hours, temperature, all this shit. And we like a joke like that is taken seriously. I don't.
Yeah.
We can even preface the joke and be like, hey guys, the next couple seconds, we're totally lying and this is a joke. Say the joke, finish the joke, and be like, hey guys, that was a complete joke. That wasn't real. But inevitably, like the first 2 comments are like, bullshit. He's not getting 2 hours of sleep in natty. Fuck that guy.
Or he's on drugs getting 2 hours of sleep a night.
Yeah, that's the only way.
Have you ever heard of Poe's law? It's
No.
like an internet law like that, or it's, yeah, if you could look it up, it's basically like if you do not disclaim it directly, nobody will know that it's satire. And I guess in this case, even if you do, people don't know that it's satire.
Have you seen that
that's
clip that we're talking about?
I haven't.
Do you want to find it?
I can try to find it. I
haven't
think
seen
it was
it.
just
It's a classic.
But Poe's law is very interesting because
Yeah, we talked about how he eats and stuff too, or how he doesn't eat. He doesn't really eat, just drinks water, I think. Yeah. 2 hours sleep.
And that was not too long after we had Chef Rush on. So you were talking about like the 2,000 push-ups before you like.
Yeah.
did you guys have Chef Rush on
Yeah.
We
on the
did.
show in person?
Yeah.
Yeah, he has very big
Massive.
biceps. Very big biceps.
Did you
I think
talk
you were
about him
here,
on
right,
your
Smoke?
channel?
He broke our
Oh,
talk.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, his routine's insane, dude.
Yeah. How much of it was possible and true? We don't know.
And he does a lot of push-ups.
He does a lot of push-ups. He has the capacity to do a lot of push-ups. He did a lot of push-ups when he came here. Just bumped out like 150.
I think he made a mistake in his rebuttal where he called, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he implied Greg Doucette was racist or something.
Yeah.
And it was like, why wouldn't, like, you could just have a rebuttal that's just straight up a rebuttal. Like, why is that? Why do you have to throw in something? And then Greg fucking tweaked.
His neck was gonna explode.
That's man, it sucked that he did that because that's unfortunate. Greg's not racist.
Yeah. How does
what do you got over there?
I was gonna ask Derek, like, how does it feel to kind of be like the final boss for like the Natty or not shit? You know, like, cause like they'll tag Greg and they'll tag other, but then
I
it's
think
like,
Mike O'Hearn's the final boss, bro.
Well, he's on the opposite side. That's your opposition.
Oh, I'm the final.
No, like, you're the final guy because it's like even with Nsima, we're like, dude, what can we do? And they're like, oh, we'll wait for Derek to test him or some shit like that.
Oh, yeah, that
it
was
just
the
seems
kind
like
of
you're the last guy.
That was kind of the weird thing, is because I did see that clip. That's how I found your guys' stuff to begin with.
That's how you found our shit with that clip?
Oh my God.
So then,
fucking hell.
So this is where you can imagine why some people get like have come to that conclusion. Like, 'cause even me, I was like, "There's no way he's serious," but there was a lot of people that thought you were, and people were asking in like Reddit threads and stuff, "Is this guy natural?" Like, there's no fucking way. Like, and then I found out you were working with Marek before I even knew, and your blood work was there. So I was like, okay, this is kind of. It was kind of complicated at that point to do like a legitimate, unbiased analysis. So I was like, okay, it might just not happen.
Do you know,
fuck,
offhand, what the effective dose of caffeine is, like, in general? Like, I don't know if you would call it like medical or whatever, like effective dose
for what?
For performance. Like if you're an athlete or if you're trying like strength athlete.
I think off the top of my head, it was like. There is a study that actually assesses force production outcomes or what could attenuate like sleep deprived induced performance loss, and I forget what it was exactly, but it was like 400 or something, 300 to 400 maybe. I forget off the top of my head.
Was it like 2 kilograms, like 3 to 1 milligram to kilogram type of thing?
If I don't remember the hundreds, there's no way I'm going to remember a kilogram ratio, so I have no idea off the top of my head.
Because I feel like, because you said a gram of caffeine.
I said it was like I said a lot. It was like 1,000.
I don't know.
It was just a lot of caffeine.
Yeah, so it was just like, what's the most absurd thing I could say without sounding like I'm maybe like totally bullshitting, even though you probably thought it still was.
It sounded like, no, man, that video,
we were literally
like
laughing.
Bullshit. We were laughing,
you had
dog.
such a straight face for like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Like,
well, okay.
I think you guys have mastered.
You guys did good.
I think you guys have mastered trolling.
But so then, did you get Nsima's lab work though? Like, did you get a chance?
Yeah,
to actually...
he provided it to me too. But then I also knew that we were working with him behind the scenes, and I had no idea at the time. So it was. But yeah, and he's been drug tested concurrently as well. So
what was your analysis of his blood work though?
I'd have to bring it up to remember exactly what it said.
In the moment, though, was it like...
From what I saw, everything checked out, so...
Got it.
Yeah.
Because he's the final boss, and we get this in the fucking comments all the time. It's like, well, let's see what Derek has to say. It's like, well, there, you guys heard it.
Except from what I saw.
From what he saw at the time.
At the time of that exact test.
All right, I have a question.
He was cycled off.
That's what'll happen.
He's
but
good at that.
When it comes to, you put out, number one, you put out a lot of content, you have 3 businesses, you're extremely productive. Even when we were doing a little bit of a pump workout in the gym, beforehand, you're like, I typically just like to go and do things because immediately my brain is working the best at that time. So you think a lot about your productivity when it comes to certain things. What I'm curious about that is when it comes to your workflow and stuff. I know you're big into a certain type of supplementation, but if someone is trying to peak the fuck out of their focus, what are some immediate things, whether it's supplementation habits that they can add into their routine so that they can get the most cognitive benefit out of what they're doing?
It really depends on the person, because you could give general vague recommendations that could potentially be counterproductive for one person. Because I know some people who, I don't know about you guys, but I try to maintain like a fasting window when I wake up because I'm more sharp before if I eat carbs, for example, brain function gone 20% down at least for me. But some people, they literally can't function without a heavy breakfast, which to me is the total antithesis of, helpful. So for me, I try to stave off hunger as long as I can, because I know once I have that first meal, I'm, my sharpness drops by, a significant amount. So
quick question about that specifically. Do you know, because like we've been utilizing fasting for a while too, and we've noticed the cognitive benefits of not eating and just working, right?
Yeah.
But it took you a while to get used to that, right?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
so-
I had very much become acclimated to eating when I wake up. So it's definitely a new habit that you have to form and become used to doing, because sometimes your brain becomes tied to a certain activity, and then it associates, functioning with eating right when you wake up. And then you think, if I don't eat the breakfast, can I even go work at all?
Yep.
Yeah. So a lot of it is just foundational principles, as boring as it is. Some people might think, what's like the sickest biohack for mental clarity? But it's like very much high quality sleep, getting in a good micronutrient dense diet. A lot of people focus just on the protein intake, but then overlook the actual quality of the food, and they end up eating stuff that's just like not even food. It's just like a protein replacement supplement or like whatever. And actually hitting all of your like base foundational principles, I think, is like the meat and potatoes of what you need to focus on. Then anything else is icing on the cake. And if you have certain deficiencies that would warrant addressing, like some nootropics that are seen as cognitive enhancing, they're really just kind of like supplements for inadequate choline intake or this or that. And some people might benefit from that. Some people, they might not. So it kind of depends on the person. But yeah, I wouldn't overarchingly be like, oh yeah, nicotine or caffeine or this or that. Like they could be useful for certain people, but I wouldn't just say like broad spectrum overarchingly, everyone should be doing this or everyone should be doing that. Like some people take choline supplements and they feel worse because they either get enough through their diet already, or they're not deficient, or they can't process it in a way that is otherwise effective for them.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends.
Yeah, the answer for every question,
It's a boring
this
answer,
industry is,
unfortunately.
it depends. It always is. It depends.
But there's always a bunch of things that like you can like, for example, the choline thing, or maybe going to trying out your nootropic route, or trying out the habit of fasting. There's a bunch of things you could plug in that can have a big effect. Like for me personally, the biggest effect has been like learning about intermittent fasting a few years ago, because I learned about and I started doing that because I heard all these high performance people talk about the mental cognitive effects.
The biggest hack I could probably suggest that would probably benefit a lot of people if they don't have like blood sugar regulation issues and otherwise, need a breakfast to function or whatever, is finding ways to stave off the appetite or craving for food in the morning as much as possible. So whatever habits you do that support that, I feel like the longer you can drag out that window of that mental clarity from the lack of intake of calories, ideally entirely, the better you'll probably be. Like I would find being just normally functioning in a fasting window relative to being having a giant dinner and then taking like the most intense stimulant of all time. Like I would function better fasting with no drugs than with a shit ton of food in my system and the most hectic of drugs, personally.
I think it's important to note that like when we're talking about fasting, you're also mentioning that like maybe you had a big dinner. So, people tend to think, what about post-workout nutrition, and what about pre-workout nutrition? To me, pre-workout is anything that you've eaten before you worked out, regardless of how long it is. And then post-workout nutrition would be the same thing. It's kind of regardless. I know there's like a sweet spot so you can kind of ride out that hormonal cascade and stuff. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it matters a lot. What matters the most, in my opinion, is just how can you be consistent? How can you follow through with a program or a protocol? Because if you fast and you crash every time, and you fast and then you binge and you fast, and it's clearly not working, like you weren't able to sustain it, then you need to probably, try it maybe a little longer, or you probably need to like dismiss it and just realize, I don't think that's the way for me.
Yeah. And I think like you guys are a good example of, trying out stuff that might otherwise spit in the face of like ideal bodybuilding stuff. Like you do one meal a day sometimes now, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like for you, has your physique like significantly deteriorated? No. Like if anything, you're fucking still as jacked as ever, seemingly. So,
but I get enough calories in that meal.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah. So it all kind of depends. But like for you, you've done a lot of things that would otherwise be seen as suboptimal, but they've still been more conducive for whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. And, it's not always that you need to follow the 6 meals a day or get the anabolic window in or whatever. So, yeah.
Greg made a video saying like you don't need to do the squat, bench, and deadlift. And I agree with that. You don't need to do it. But one of the things that
quick caveat, because I know that could get clipped. I think if you are bodybuilding, you know, several meals a day could probably be the most conducive thing to getting you to where you need to go. I don't think shoving it all into one window is the ideal way if you're trying to grow. But I think for you, you're very much re-evaluating what's important in life to you based on what maybe 10 years ago was most important, and reallocating things accordingly to be kind of like broad spectrum, hitting all the vectors you want in like the maximal way you can, but perhaps it's not the best way, but it's still adequate for what you deem to be satisfactory.
Yes, and Zach, don't forget what you're going to say, but I want to say two things about that. First off, there are days I do one meal a day, and then there are days, because my activity ranges from a day to day, where I'm like, okay, today I should eat breakfast, because I can feel like, oh, wow, I did a lot yesterday, and even that dinner didn't fix it. I'm going to eat 2 or 3 meals today. So it ranges. It's not like this one meal a day every fucking day type of thing. But also when you were mentioning like, you know, sometimes you'll fast and you'll binge. Remember when we started fasting? How like as we were getting the hang of it, there would be days where it's just like, oh fuck, I ate too much last night. Like you get used to this new habit. You're not sure how much you can handle in terms of food after you haven't eaten all day long, and then you eat way too much and you're like, oh fuck, right? There's an adjustment period to any of these habits, and you cannot expect it to be an immediate thing. It took us a few months to get used to fasting, right? But when we've gotten used to it, it's an amazing tool that we have in the toolbox. So just think about that, and remember, it's not an immediate thing.
And we have run into people that also struggled with getting in enough food too. So just, you got to try it out for a while and give it a shot and see how it works for you.
I think an important thing with this is not checking off the box that, oh, that's not for me, until you really have done it. And that's kind of where I was going with this. Like Greg Doucette made that video saying you don't have to bench squat or deadlift. And that absolutely may be true in definitely certain instances and depending on what your goals are. But I think what I've seen a lot with, and I'll use the squat as an example, is people tend to go in, put weight on the bar, and just kind of start squatting because it is kind of like an intuitive type of movement, or at least it should be. And then they'll get on a hack squat, or they'll get on a leg press, or they'll get on a leg extension, and they'll say, wow, that feels a lot better. Like that, I feel a pump now in my legs. Whereas when I was back squatting, it just felt weird. Like I just couldn't manage all my joints and everything. That is kind of like this like false positive type of thing that you've now given yourself. And you basically say, well, the squat isn't for me. I tried it. It doesn't work as well. It doesn't feel as good. What you didn't do was like develop any level of mobility that could potentially make the squat feel good. And that's something that I've been trying to do for people for years. Like, hey guys, I have like a bunch of technique videos that can help develop this thing that you're not so good at, and maybe do all of that, then try the thing that you're not so good at. You might have a totally new understanding of this thing and you might like it. And I think that a lot of people say, hey, if it's not for you, don't do it. You don't have to. But people cannot determine whether it is for them or not until they go through that process. So it's like, that's something that I'm always advocating for. Like, don't give up on something because right now it doesn't feel good. You have to try it enough times and you have to break through different things. So like fasting or whatever, you could be like, man, every time I fast, when I eat my meal, I end up eating 3,000, 4,000 calories, which by the way, I could do fucking easily. I know everyone at this table could easily do that. Fast all day and then have an entire pizza to yourself. Boom. You know, that's,
you didn't finish your steak the other day though, bro.
Calling you out. Look at that.
You know how much protein we ate when I was there?
Oh yeah, it was awesome. That was the best meal like I've had in a long time. Mark just got oysters, tuna tartare, and then steaks, and then like maybe a few potatoes. And
I went to a restaurant with him and Chris, and I was shocked at how little they ate.
You were just disappointed.
Oh, shut up, dude. Shut up. Get out of here. By the way, I went back and I finished that steak and everyone else's lobster mac and cheese.
Oh.
So
Did you?
When did you get the time to do that?
I took the meal home.
Oh.
The lobster mac and cheese and the mashed potatoes too that you guys didn't eat. So
I want to go back a little bit to focus and things like that. There are things like Modafinil, and there's other
tell me
things.
about this, dude.
Some mind bullet, some Kratom. Well, my brother made a movie about it called Leaf of Faith.
Excellent, by the way.
And it's something my brother kept recommending it to me, and I was like, I don't think I need that, because he was mentioning for like pain management, and I was like, I I don't feel like I'm in a lot of pain. I feel pretty good. And then I think just something was bothering me, maybe my back or something. And I was like, well, I'll give it a try. And I just, for myself, I noticed just a boost in my mood. I just like felt really good. I felt really happy. I felt like we always say, I feel like I'm like giving people hugs or people are hugging me or something like that. So I was like, shit, whatever that is, like that feels pretty good. So I started utilizing it before some workouts. Now I take it before bed, first thing in the morning. I take it before I shit. I take it when I go to the bath. No, I'm just kidding. I will utilize it often before like a run, sometimes before a podcast, kind of depending on what it is. But yeah, I love Kratom. I love Mind Bullet. It's been a great product for us.
How many grams of Kratom is like the equivalency of one dose for these?
That sucker right there, the potion that you're holding, is about 8 grams. So that is a pretty hefty dose. And I usually sip on it. I usually go like quarter or half or something like that.
I'll do a third. Yeah, I'll usually do like one of these might last me 3 days.
Damn.
Yeah.
Oh, I did a full one on the podcast.
No, this is the
last
thing.
time I was here. You guys gave me a full dose.
Yeah. Sometimes it's nice, right? Bastards.
Yeah,
I tried to caution you.
I think it's really an awesome pre-workout personally.
Yeah.
But what are things like modafinil? Like what do these things do? And it's my understanding, I've never tried some of these other things, but I've heard more recently there's like injectables and stuff that people are getting into. I don't know how well they work and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I think people conflate smart drugs a lot with stimulants, which is they're not really. They can make you more productive or more, offset poor sleep. Like modafinil is a wakefulness drug, and it's prescribed for people with sleep apnea actually too.
How does it help with sleep apnea?
Because if you have poor quality sleep and you're very prone to just falling asleep at random times throughout the day. So, like, for example, when I first found out I had sleep apnea when I was, I don't know, like 10 years ago or something, I was falling asleep. And it got progressively worse the bigger I got because it was definitely like a physical impediment thing by neck size for me. So when I was in classes in university, I literally couldn't sit there for more than 5 minutes without passing out. And everyone just teacher thought I was a shitty student, but I just literally couldn't stay awake. So you get prescribed modafinil, which is a wakefulness agent, which would keep you awake to kind of make up for. And again, this is sort of where it would be more ideal to have an understanding of what goes into, certain disease states or whatever, because then you can otherwise identify, maybe I wouldn't need the modafinil if I actually took care of my sleep apnea rather than just band-aiding the issue. But anyways, modafinil is prescribed for essentially just staying awake. It's not something that's like very euphoric. It's not something that really, like some people might otherwise get a little bit of a boost from that because it's a dopamine reuptake inhibitor. So you have more dopamine circulating that does not get essentially like used up. Like it's freely circulating for longer than it would have otherwise been, but it is not as potent as something like an Adderall or some of these other ADHD drugs. Like it's a different category entirely. So a slightly different mechanism of action, but these things are not really smart. They're more so just like creating a pseudo state of like hyper dopaminergic activity to then make up for, I don't know, like if you actually have a deficiency in some area, like, yeah, maybe it could help you focus more. But it is like a different kind of category, I would say, than nootropics, because those are more designed around things that actually support brain health, cognitive enhancement, neuroprotection, things of that nature, as opposed to like hyper aggressive stimulants that just create like a self-induced pseudo state of, hyper sympathetic drive, dopaminergic activity that is otherwise unsustainable as a natural. And then you become reliant on that new baseline very quickly. And before you know it, you're taking, 20, 30 milligrams of a combo of amphetamines just to function as you would have normally naturally.
What was the Sam Bankman-Fried drug?
Selegiline.
So what did that do?
That was a monoamine oxidase B inhibitor. So it basically phenethylamine as well as dopamine, neurotransmitters in the brain that otherwise get deaminated and broken down by something called monoamine oxidase. And if you inhibit that enzymatic process, you basically keep it around longer.
Yeah.
So you can have like a heightened level of like central nervous system stimulation and dopaminergic activity, and it kind of creates this new baseline state that's perpetual, because this drug that he used, it was like a transdermal patch.
Have you ever tried that shit?
I haven't tried that drug.
Okay.
But it's not as intense as like actual amphetamines, but it's he was very much using something that sustains itself around the clock. Those kind of drugs kind of freak me out too, because they're like, it's called a suicidal inhibitor. So once it attaches to this enzyme and binds to it, you have to then wait until you create the enzyme entirely again from scratch before you can then get the same level of metabolism of certain compounds, essentially. So for that, even though the half-life is a certain duration, you still have to wait for your body to onboard new enzymes to actually, so like its effect could last for weeks even after discontinuation.
Oh, Jesus.
So anyway, he had this patch and it was like bleeding out this hormone over, not hormone, but this compound over, I think it was like 9 milligrams every 24 hours or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, it essentially creates like a new baseline of like low grade enhanced dopaminergic signaling perpetually, because it doesn't work its way out of your system because it's every 24 hours.
So I think I don't know if I heard this from Huberman or where I heard this, but it doesn't, and I think this is kind of what you're getting at with these amphetamines, is that they don't actually enhance cognitive performance. They just like help release dopamine.
It
right?
depends. And this
Like-
drug also metabolizes into amphetamine itself. I forget exactly which amphetamine it was. It might be like an analog or something, but it was its effects are kind of like speculative as to what the main driver of its mechanism is, but it seems to be the monoamine oxidase inhibiting properties. But yeah, like the like stimulation of release of, you know, dopamine that otherwise wouldn't have been there, it's not necessarily conducive to cognitive health at all.
But so like this is where is a very interesting thing, is like people who take Adderall, it's not that they're more effective, it's just that they like what they're doing more, or it's more fun, or like they get a better response from it. So like you take Adderall and you clean the house and you're like, wow, I'm so much more productive. Like
yeah.
it's just because you don't hate cleaning the house.
Some
as
people
much.
use it to tie like reward signaling to activities that they otherwise found tedious and boring too. Like if you're trying to study and you take amphetamines, you might otherwise be trying to train your brain to enjoy the activity that otherwise was like the most dull, and you know, a task you would have not been able to focus on all of a sudden becomes this thing that you don't mind doing because you just feel good. So it's kind of a hack in some instances. Like I'm not saying it has no utility by any means. It's just the way people go about using it, I think, is often misguided, and they think that it's like a brain enhancing thing. Whereas you could otherwise be taking away from your brain function of tomorrow to get like squeeze more out of today sort of thing.
I remember how hyped up I used to get like before finals, like in college. Like I would just be like, all right, we're going to the library. My buddy's got some Adderall for me. Like
I used to pride myself on how much information I could shove in my brain in a matter of 24 hours. And I knew immediately after the test.
Oh, it's gone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You walk out of the room, you're like, I don't remember shit.
Yeah.
I just wrote the test 2 seconds ago.
Yeah. College, like, honest to God, made like the process of like learning, and it gamed it in such a way that I actually think I became stupider. Yeah. Like it was like in no way do I care about your final, but you told me how I can get an A, and you bet your ass I'm going to put my best foot forward and try to get an A. And that is to show up on the final and memorize everything that you possibly can in weird ways with copious amounts of Adderall and copious amounts of cramming in the last minute. And I'm going to game the system, and I'm going to write this test, and I'm not going to remember a single fucking thing after this.
Yeah.
And like, cause I don't care about it, you know? And that, like, it's such a flawed way of going through like the process of education. It's utterly pathetic, but I played that game, and so many other people played that game.
Something I've been considering that I thought would be interesting is going back to my university and sitting in a marketing class just to see, because I don't exactly remember what they tried to teach me back then. I just remember it was very not applicable now, but they have people that are positioning themselves as like, this is how you have a successful business or whatever. Like one of the funniest degrees is the entrepreneurship degree.
Oh yeah.
I'm like,
Is that new? Is that like a new
no,
word?
that was like
No, there were entrepreneurship
in the
kids
business
and-
faculty, there was different subsections of undergrads you could get, and one of them was entrepreneurship. And I'm just like what I've spent, I don't know, $100,000 plus or however much it costs. I don't even remember, but it was, you know, prohibitively expensive. But to get this like degree after 4 years, and then I'm still at ground zero in debt.
Yeah.
Like, how is this conducive to entrepreneurship whatsoever? And I don't know. It's just some of the stuff made no sense to me. And I would love to, I don't even know if it would be legal, but I would love to go like sit in a classroom and just like get my reaction to the whatever material they're putting out now.
The university collegiate game is just so funny to me, man. It's so funny, especially because I was working at Texas A&M and seeing the amount of money that they make off these kids. 60,000 undergrad. Like, how special can a degree be if 60,000 people within 1 mile of each other are getting that same degree? Like, you know, and the amount of money that they get off of football games, and just, it's a racket, bro.
I think
there's a total racket.
I think there are certain jobs, because I'm very pessimistic about the
the
university system, but I always try to preface it with like there are certain jobs that, you know, you're kind of forced to do it if you want to do that gig. Like my girlfriend's a physicist, and you can't just become a physicist.
Of course.
Yeah.
So, but for marketing or entrepreneurship, I don't know, man. I feel like I wasted a bit of time and money.
No, like you know, our parents, our educators, they just said like, you can't get a job that you're gonna want or make enough money unless you get an education.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, if you want to be an engineer, you got to go to engineering school, because that's a known thing.
Yeah.
You want to be a lawyer, you got to go to, it was like, no, if you want a good job, everyone wants a good job.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go to school. I got to go to school. And then when I go there, it's like, you give me your syllabus. This is exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, fuck it. Like,
What was the job you guys were doing before you got into social media stuff? Like
should we go around the?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. So the first job out of college, I was an assistant for what you would call like a rep for an advertisement agencies. He was like the middleman between production companies and advertisement agencies. So there was a lot of schmoozing and stuff, and I was just his assistant. He'd pay me $500 a week. It was awesome. And then like the fact that it was $500 cash a week was like the coolest thing ever for me. And then I just slowly but surely became obsessed with training, and it was CrossFit at the time, and then weightlifting, and then I just like transferred into that space. But that was my first, like, that was my actual job that I had.
Oh, right on.
Out of college?
Yes.
Okay.
I also was bouncing for a little bit too.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Okay.
So
You three were bouncers at
yeah,
a certain point.
bouncing a little bit, and then that's pretty much it. Yeah. And then, you know, personal training, Gold's Gym personal training.
Yeah.
Strength and
so
conditioning
long.
coach.
It's been so long since I've had a job. I did train people for a while. I was a bouncer as well, and
Okay.
that's about it for me.
Yeah.
Nsima?
African mom. She was an engineer. So I was initially going to school because I wanted to become a doctor. Like being African, it's like the doctor, lawyer, engineer. It's like if you're not, then you are a failure to your family. But then I realized, because I was volunteering in a hospital, that like I didn't want to spend my days in a hospital. So I didn't realize I didn't know what I wanted to do in school anymore, because I realized that I didn't want to go that route. So I dropped out and started like training people. I was like a personal trainer for a while. And then I started just like continuing to work with people until I found myself doing that. Then I came here, and
How'd you guys meet and connect? Because you're like the co-host of this thing now, and like it's, I don't know, it's just like an interesting scenario.
Yeah, I'm actually very curious about it.
You want
Like maybe you guys have talked about this a lot. Apologies if this is like redundant, but
No.
like
No,
I
we
don't
haven't talked
even
about it
know.
that much.
not that much.
And Andrew as well. Like
I think-
you guys have a nice little trio here.
Thank
you.
For real.
Yeah, I think all of it kind of happened because the gym is free, right?
Well,
Ish.
I was actually scared of coming in here initially.
Did you come to the thing with Omar?
The seminar with Mike and Omar.
So that's
and
where
you.
I first saw you, right?
Yeah, and then I
Yeah.
didn't come back after that. That was in 2014. I came to
So
a
including Smokey too. I mean, all of this is because the gym is free and these guys are fucking cheap. Basically, that's how a lot of this stuff happens. So we had Omar Isuf come in and do a seminar, and we did like a live podcast recording seminar type thing. And Nsima came to that. And then I saw him at LA, I think at LA Fit Expo. And I was like, I think I met you at the gym, at
Barbell
my
Brigade.
gym or something. And yeah, I saw him at Barbell Brigade. And then I was like, I think you told me you live in Sacramento. Like, why aren't you training in my gym? And so then he started coming in. And then Andrew came into the gym. Again, we had a seminar. Most of the seminars that we do are free. And he took some photos that day. I think maybe he emailed me ahead of time asking if it was okay, or maybe he asked me there on the spot if it was okay to take pictures. And then we talked a little bit afterwards. I was like, actually, I could really use a photographer. And he was like, and he like gave me a card or something, or told me a email or a website to go to where he does his photography. I was like, this is perfect time. Like I was literally just thinking like I need a photographer, and he just fucking dropped out of the sky.
Yeah, that was wild. It was right after Chris Bell was on Joe Rogan, so that was like my like opening statement was like, dude, Chris on Joe Rogan was fucking cool and da da da. And so, yeah, but yeah, that's how we all met here, because of the gym.
What number episode is this?
It's gonna be like 8 something.
8
Yeah,
something.
but I did about 600 of them before that, probably.
Oh, okay.
So did you
Wait, 8 something what? Which episode are we talking about?
Chill out, bro. Hold on, let me figure it out.
I'm confused.
800
and
something.
It'll be 849.
Oh, this episode.
This episode's 849. Wow.
Yeah.
man.
So did you think Nsima was like extraordinarily articulate, or how did you determine
was
he'd
like-
be a good co-host?
Well, I was just like, this guy's on tons of shit like me. This is gonna be great. We're just going to talk about steroids the whole time.
yeah, you found out he was Natty, and you were like, what the fuck?
I guess I asked him, and like then he was like, I think he said yes, but he like walked away like, fuck.
Wait, what are you talking about right now?
I think I asked you to be on the show, and then you
yeah.
walked away, and you were like, God damn, I don't know if I got anything to talk about.
Oh yeah, dog. I said yeah real quick. It was I think we did an episode together, an episode like 70 something of the podcast. You invited me on as a guest. That was years ago. And then like I think 100 episodes later, you're like, hey, you want to try co-hosting? And yeah, I immediately said yeah, but I didn't think I had anything to talk about for any period of time. The shit was
I
scary.
think he
as
like
fuck.
drove home that day, and he was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. You being on this show, this is gonna be crazy.
Yeah, dog.
It's a random call.
Yeah. Andrew Huberman's
Huberman's-
calling.
Hey.
I feel like I probably shouldn't answer it live.
That would be an interesting.
He's like, yo, I'm in jail. Help me out. You're like, what the hell?
Out of all the people, you're the only number I could remember. I'm sorry.
You're on speaker, bro.
yeah. I'm in a lot of trouble, and I need your help. And I need you to say yes. Don't ask me what it is.
With Nsima, just asking him to come on the show. I always like to surround myself with people that I think are like-minded people that want to be better, they want to do better, and they're working on it continuously. And that's something I saw with him. And I was like, he's in better shape than me. He's a little taller than me. He's a little tanner than me. I'm like, to me, I think that's perfect. Like I actually like that. I like to have, somebody next to me that I get to chase after. I don't know if I'll ever catch up to him, but I'll work on it.
No, there's definitely something to be said about surrounding yourself. Like everyone always says,
He's young too, and that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I try to associate with people who are like hyper ambitious, entrepreneurial, stuff like that, because it's like a whole different world than, if I just stay in my little bubble in Canada and kind of just, talk to the same people over and over again. It's hard to kind of break out and keep yourself motivated and have that drive perpetually. So
That was the biggest change for me in my life, was becoming really good friends with Chris and then moving in with Chris. And it's like every metric of my YouTube, everything has gone up because I see someone who works so hard and is so driven and is that far ahead of me.
Yeah.
How long after you met that you moved in? That's pretty quick. It sounds like it happened pretty quick.
Well, we're just two young lovers,
That's what I was thinking of the listeners. I was thinking of the listeners like, wow, okay. Oh, we just found out something that we didn't really know starting out the show, but okay, I'll keep listening.
Hey, it's two separate houses. So,
Moved in together in 2 separate houses. Just
Chris
next
is,
door.
his stuff is in the back house, but we sleep together.
You leave your toothbrush in his home sometimes, don't you? Oh,
Sometimes
I got to brush my teeth. Yeah, we know what's going on over there.
No, but it does help to have people, like to have friends that you admire in not just like who they are as a person, but what they can show you that they do.
I
Like,
think it humbles the shit out of you too.
Oh,
When you think you're, hot shit, and then you're around people that are far more successful
Yep.
or on your level or whatever, like it keeps you grounded and like be grateful for what you have, but you're not the shit. Like relax.
yeah.
Yeah, I loved working out with the different people that have come in here over the years, whether it's like Jay Cutler or Stan Efferding or Eric Spoto. Actually, I remember Eric Spoto saying, like, you're the only guy that ever benched with me. And I was like, I didn't really bench with you. You just killed me. This guy benched 635 for a double that day. And
Jesus.
I think I did pretty well, but I benched probably 100 pounds less at least. And he was like, no, I just mean like once I start going up in weight, people just leave. And I was like, I'm the only guy that ever stick around. I'm like, all right, that sounds cool. Like I kind of like that. It gives me a lot of motivation. What do you think is something, kind of, we'll end the podcast here, but what do you think is something that someone can do and or take that can help with motivation? Because it does seem like testosterone can sometimes help. And again, that might be if someone's in a place where their testosterone is low to begin with. What are some kind of things that you've noticed over the years that could help, I guess, just get someone started? Because I see a lot of people are kind of hurting, depressed, anxious. And in my opinion, I would love to see them just move. But like, how do we get them in motion?
Yeah. As far as testosterone, like Huberman has a good quote. It's testosterone makes effort feel good. I think that's definitely a relevant and applicable statement for that. If you were deficient, it's worthwhile to address it for sure and see if there's any clinical deficiency. I don't want to go too down the rabbit hole. Like ultimately, the foundational backbones of good sleep, diet, etc. Like everyone already knows that. That's going to be the meat and potatoes of everything as far as like motivating yourself with drugs or not. Like I think ultimately if there's a deficiency, it could absolutely be, detrimental to your drive to even want to go to the gym. It becomes impossible not only to build sufficient muscle or make any progress, but also your motivation and mental state to actually even be conducive to getting off your ass could be very, very hindered if you have suboptimal testosterone, for example. So I think that's a worthwhile example, but it's definitely, the answer to that is not just go inject yourself. It's very much to find out, like, is this the reason why you feel this way? And the reason why your mental state is in the place it is? And do you have all your other bases covered? But for me, like motivation wise, we just talked about surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals, people who you strive to either emulate what they're doing or, keep up in some way because you like competition. I think motivation is grounded in competition to some extent. Like even among friends, I like to be competitive and kind of, be up to snuff with what they're doing. You very much feel compelled to push yourself harder when you're around people that also push themselves. So for me, the biggest motivating factor and like what underpins a lot of what I do is seeing other people in my space killing it and me wanting to, be in that, I don't know, like feel like I'm actually doing myself justice and kind of like meeting my potential.
Let me quickly add to that because I remember what you said there. We were talking about surrounding yourself with people, right? And when Mark invited me to the gym, right, at the gym I was training at before, I was like the strongest guy in that gym. It wasn't like a community-based gym either. I was at a 24 and then this other gym, Olympus Sports Coliseum, where there were a few other powerlifters, but I was the strongest guy there. And I wasn't really getting that much stronger, that much faster. But when I came to super training in 2015, I wasn't the strongest guy in the gym. I was actually I wasn't that great. And because I had guys like this guy that used to be here, Marcus, I had Mike Farr here, other guys were like helping me and helping me with my technique, helping me pick things out. Mark was also. Within a few months, my deadlift regressed a little bit because they changed up my form. And then I was able to put like 80 good pounds on my deadlift within a 5 or 6 month period. This is a gain that I didn't have before because I didn't have people around me that were helping me improve. I wasn't seeing people around me that were lifting some crazy weight. But within a short amount of time, by getting around people that were much stronger than me, that had way more knowledgeable than me in that, right? I got stronger so much faster. Now, I know this isn't a motivation thing or a testosterone thing or whatever, but by getting around better people, I immediately became better just by a byproduct of having them around me. And they're probably shit happened to my hormones to some extent, but the basis of trying to improve your surroundings of the people around you is actually a very, very big deal to any type of progress.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also just doing what you love is the most important thing too, because you're not going to be motivated to continue pushing once you start to burn out or something presents itself that's an obstacle. If you're doing something you fucking hate, like you almost have to push yourself just to do the thing, like almost in a mediocre way. Like if you're doing I'm not necessarily saying everyone, go quit your job if you don't like it or anything, but like doing activities that you're passionate about, I think everyone can resonate with the fact that it's easiest to excel and lean into that and become better or improve in some capacity when you actually care about what you're doing. So like even from the content side or, the business side, like whatever it is that, or if you're, hyper passionate about training, all that stuff, surrounding yourself with the right people, but also making sure you love what you're doing, I think is absolutely, I don't know, at the pinnacle of success.
Yeah, then give yourself some slack too. If there is something that you really do like and enjoy, and if you have moments where you don't necessarily feel like doing it, I suppose you can like force yourself to do it. But it's been my experience. It's been nice just to let it pass. Like it was let it go. Like with lifting, I don't mind like letting lifting go for a little bit because I know that there's going to be some like I've always lifted. I love it. It will always be there. Mm-hmm. And if I have a couple days or a week or something where I just don't really feel like doing much of it, I'm totally cool with it. Andrew, take us on out of here.
Sure thing. Make sure you guys stick around for Smelly's big old tip before we get out of here. And let us know what you guys think about today's conversation. Drop all those comments down below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you guys are not subscribed already. For everything podcast related, head over to powerproject.live. You'll find a bunch of cool shit there, including links to Marek.com. That's what we talked about today. Links to them down in the description below as well. Follow the podcast at MB Power Project on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. My Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter is at I am Andrew Z. And Nsima, where you at?
Some free mouth tape for you guys.
Oh, there you go.
Breathe through your nose at night.
Hostage tape.
Shut your fucking mouth. At Nsima Inyang on Instagram, YouTube, and Nsima Inyang on TikTok and Twitter. Discord's below. Powerproject.live for all this cool shit. Derek and Zack, where can people find you guys?
I'm at More Plates, More Dates on all social media, essentially. And yeah, you can find me there.
Coach_ZT at on Instagram, and then Zach Tellender on YouTube. And then check out the WeFunder for first feature film called The Wait.
Awesome.
You can check that out. Just go to wefunder.com and then search The Wait feature film.
Derek, we've had some people on the show that are on so much shit, they just sit here and go.
Yeah. They snore when they're awake.
Like Darth Vader's on the show. Like, oh my God. Smelly's tip of the day is the quote from Louis Simmons that I think goes along with a lot of what we talked about today. If you walk with the lame, you will develop a limp. Strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you guys later.